All right. Good morning. Today is a work session for the Board of County Commissioners. It's Tuesday, December the 18th, 2018, and we're kind of moving our agenda around today. We're being fluid. So the first item on our agenda will be what was supposed to be almost the last item, which is the ambulance building project update. Please introduce yourselves for the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager.
And I'm Gabe Muthing, Aspen Ambulance District Director.
So we're back about every other month. We come back and give you an update, but we do have one direction that we'll need out of you today regarding the solar discussion on the building itself. So we're poised to have that discussion. So we'll kind of go through this, bring you up to speed. You're going to see some kind of before and after photos here. So on our progress report, we've got the building slab, and as you can see, the rebar and the drainage that was put in place prior to pouring the floor. And in the upper right-hand side on the screen there is the slab. That was poured last week. It was all one continuous pour. They did a great job on it. It had to be covered, and so with the conditions that we've been having, FCI is managing this really well. It really...
I saw the trucks lined up there. That must have been
staging on Castle Creek there, I know.
They were quick, very quick.
It was a big day, yeah. But it really went well and was successful. This is a trash enclosure, so on the lower left you can see that everything right now, when they do this work, it all has to be tarped and heated. So these are the masons working underneath that canopy, and then this is the end result. And this is, again, is in the southeast corner, I guess?
Yes. No.
Northeast. Northwest corner.
It's in the corner.
I get all turned around my direction.
corner of the
Bell Corner versus.
There you go. Yes, there you go. I can deal with that. But this is what that structure will look like. This replaces a lot of those wooden sheds that were up towards the trash enclosure previously. So this replaces that, allows us to put facilities to put their equipment in it, and then also will contain all of our bear-proof trash containers eventually. The CastInPlace Wall on the back, I thought this was kind of interesting series of photos. You can see how we start with the foundation itself and then the forms that go up to be able to pour those walls, and then on the back you can see the wall itself. And this was just prior to that pour. This was a photo that was sent out yesterday, and I believe now it's even...
It's even higher. Yep.
Yeah.
Put the handles in and a few courses of block up already.
So he's playing shuffleboard.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah. This is looking towards the hospital, so this would be standing inside the bays looking out, and those openings are, like Gabe said, the lintels have been set, so those are where the open doors will go for the apparatus to go into. So
What is CMU?
it's a block. It's a type of block that they use. Yeah, I don't know the construction name of it.
Multi-unit.
Yeah, I will find
Very
that out.
good. I was thinking it was Colorado Mesa University, but
There you go, yeah. Well, Detweiler, he went there,
Clearly
so
we're not on
I
it.
never
not
know.
on the project anymore, so. But anyways,
Mesa University.
yeah, CMU is a description of block.
Yeah.
So it's a split-face block that we use. What to expect this next week, they'll be finishing up on the west half of the north wall of the building. So that's moving over. The steel erection will begin. They're going to start at the trash enclosure itself and then move to the main building. So we're still planning for right after the first of the year, having that ceremonial beam signing.
Oh, yeah.
We do need to still hook in the sanitary sewer to the HHS building, but that's going to be a non-disruptive event for HHS. It should go rather quickly. They have to do all that live, so that's could be interesting. And then the building perimeter drain should finish up this week, so they're putting that in. Key dates, we have now poured the floor, so that happened on the 11th, and so this is the next one is major milestone is going to be the topping out. Budget, we are now complete on the design for the parking lot. We came in just a little under budget on that, so that's good news, but kind of gives you an idea where we're at with our soft cost expenditures versus the budget. So we've spent about 2.4 so far on the overall $8.4 million project. We have funds available of 8.5, so we have not dipped into our contingency. The owner contingency, that $6,000 that you see there, is doing a trail up to Twin Ridge. That was part of the concessions we made when we had those neighborhood meetings there, that we would include that, just improvements there. And They're pleased about that. They also want to do some drainage up above, so we're going to meet with them on just kind of a coordinated effort along those lines.
I agree with that, but I wouldn't label them concessions.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They
They
aren't
were things they
concessions.
requested, and
Yeah.
we said we can do that with
You
this
are
project.
right. You're right. Thank you for that. Yeah. Solar update. This is where we need to kind of run this by you and get a little bit of direction here. It was the board's desire to at least take a look at what it would cost to put solar on this building. And again, looking at our footprint and what we were trying to put into our plan, we ended up with 3 bids, and these now are just bids that have been submitted to FCI, so they'll run this. So you have SunSense, which is out of Carbondale, Aspen Solar, and then Sol Energy. 2 out of Carbondale, 1 out of Aspen. We just really kind of focused on the top or the lower 2 numbers. And out of those 2 bids, the references are good for both. But the real differences is that SunSense gets their panels from Singapore, Aspen Solar gets those out of the USA. Really is the biggest difference between the 2. And then we focused on the low bid numbers just to take a look at it. And this is a 30+ watt I guess, project, the way that they were looking at this. And really, the only rebate that we know that we can get out of this is through CORE, and that's 75 cents a watt. So really, it's about $2,200 rebate. We maxed out on our Holy Cross Energy rebates as an organization. So those aren't available to us anymore. And that would have been about a $28,000 rebate. So if we could replace that, and they ran their numbers assuming that we would be able to get the rebate. So they ran their numbers with the 360 in their numbers, and they figured that a break-even point would be 5.1 years on this project here. Solar consumption offset is about 79%, which is high, and the estimated first-year utility savings would be just around $4,000. And then also, dollars aside, it's just the environmental benefits that they adhere to this, or at least had compared this to. And these were the 2 that they used. It was equal to 2,900 mature trees planted, or 1,557,670 auto miles not driven from an emission standpoint. So that's how they kind of looked at it from an environmental standpoint.
George, go
I
ahead.
have a question on the, you have the break-even point in terms of the cost of the panels versus the savings of energy. You have 5.1 years, but then the estimated first-year savings is only $4,000. That the math doesn't quite work out. I don't understand that.
Because 4 times 5 is only 20,000.
Thanks for
Let's see, well, yeah, I think if you take the quote, the low quote at 77, and you take off the 2,800, or the 2,200 and the 28,000, that lowers your overall costs. You
Rebates.
see what I mean by the rebates there?
Rebates
Rebates.
taken off.
And,
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, you'll have an opportunity to apply for a core grant.
Yeah, and we sent this to CORE to have them take an early look at it. And they had mentioned that they think they can do a grant for around $10,000. We may be able to do better than that. I'm not sure how they base that. But you're right. I guess I would like to offer that we start chasing to try to make up that 28,000.
Well, CORE has community grants, which is limits to $10,000, and then they have the true grants,
Okay.
which you can ask for quite a bit more
Okay.
with matching funds. So I would have a conversation with CORE
Okay.
in terms of looking for perhaps a true grant, if that's a possibility or not.
Is that outside of the UDOL grant?
That is
That is the- that is the
That is the
UDOL.
UDOL.
Well,
The other
Mona
thing
had responded to me and said that she wished we would have been able to get this into that grant cycle for the UDOL. So I don't know if we've missed that or
Oh, I
not.
might have missed that cycle because, well,
But again, this will be the last thing we construct. So this is still quite a ways down the road. So I asked her, I said, given that, can we get back into a grant cycle that may work?
you may be able to.
But we'll work with them on it. But we wanted to get your direction first before we start chasing those down.
But I don't know if we normally weigh in on bids. I think, don't we usually rely on staff for that? I mean, more FYI. I mean, I would not know who.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just go for the lower just for the sake of lower, but I rely on staff and with CORE to to determine that.
Greg and then Rachel.
I was just going to say, I appreciate the how you've broken this down, and it's exciting. You know, to be in a 5-year payback range it's great. Everybody'd love to be able to be part of something like that. I really appreciate that you've got you broke down the solar panels. Where are we sourcing the panels? And if they're coming from the states, then so much the better. And I'd support that.
Yeah, similar to Greg, I'm happy to see a early return in dollars paying for itself, but that's not the primary thing for me. It is that it will be a sound energy producing system, and we're going to get that carbon emission reduced by doing this. And then I also really agree with what Greg is saying. I think there have been times when staff has presented some of the bids, but I agree they usually have a recommendation of a top one and say what the others are, at least to my recollection.
Yeah.
I also would go with Aspen Solar. I think if they're made in the USA, they're probably unfortunately paying the tariff penalty, and that shouldn't be driving our USA manufacturing of these equipment and technologies out of business. And it's kind of up to us to support them through this time period. But I am not willing to cede the edge permanently to foreign manufacturers, which is potentially where this is leading based on the price comparisons. So that's where I would vote.
Steve?
I'm not hung up on where the panels come from. The reason solar is so inexpensive now relatively is because they started mass producing solar panels in China, and that brought the cost of solar electricity way down. My main concern is the solar panels on the roof, and I want to make sure that it's okay for the neighbors, and that it's not projecting up farther than we thought the roof was going to project up, and those sorts of issues.
Yeah, so
That's the next segment that
it
he's
is, yeah.
segue into.
Yeah, and as far as the companies, they're all reputable companies and local companies, and they employ local workers would be doing the installation, so that's a benefit to the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've from the very outset of this discussion, we've talked about involving the neighborhood, you know, and understanding the impacts to them if there were any, looking at the angle of the panel itself and if there was any reflection. And so I think this is really just the first part of that. Really, we needed to understand what type of panel would be put up, what type of panel, you know, if there was any glare, if there was any, you know, color distinction, and exactly what that angle would need to be with the building. Some of that we really had to have a little bit of the building up first to understand that, and I think we're getting to that point right now. So, but absolutely, we're actually excited about presenting this to the neighbors. I think it's a great thing for the community and, you know, for our building for sure, but we want to make sure it's okay with them as well.
Any issue with the helipad?
No. The one thing that we've looked at is our flight paths through there, and it really should not have any impact on them at all. The anchoring system for those will be through the roof itself, and so it will be pretty solid. Shouldn't be an issue
So
at all.
helicopters won't like whip them up?
Yep. Shouldn't. Maybe they'll clean it off for us every now and then, but yeah.
Okay.
But no, shouldn't be an issue.
So from a next step standpoint, we wanted to make sure you guys were okay. Give us the direction to keep moving forward.
Oh, I
Then
think we
to
definitely need to keep
Gabe's
going
point,
on
we'll then reach out with the community. We will select a low bid here. We didn't give you all the details on it. We have a little bit more work to do there, but just wanted to at least give you kind of an overview, give you a sense about the panels. I thought that was just important to bring forward.
Follow up with Mona.
But other than that, if we've got a green light to move forward, we'll take the next steps to get some sample panels. I've heard that the panels are really good about not reflecting. It's a framing around them.
Well, that could be part of it, yeah. I've noticed
Yeah,
that. The panels have a 2% reflectivity, which is getting down there where they don't really kick a lot of light.
Right.
If it's got a silver frame around it, then maybe, so just be interesting to see how they plan to
It would be.
configure it. And
Okay.
those guys know about that.
Yeah. Okay, we're good with that? And that was what we needed,
Great,
so.
thank you, and thanks for
All
coming in early.
right.
We
You
appreciate
bet.
it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Giving you time to get to your next.
I was going to say, you did great.
Okay, so next, we're gonna now go back to the airport update, and when we get Rich out of here, we'll let you guys move up. He's lost in the computer.
I can't even find that.
Escape route, maybe?
I guess so.
Right back.
Yeah.
There we go. All righty.
Great, thank you. All right. All right, please give your names for the public record.
My name is David Schneider, and I am the Airport Security Coordinator.
And I'm Phil Mraz, Director of Operations.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's going on out there?
Well, we're just going to give a quick update on the new curbside parking that's happening out there. And I'll bring this up. Continue. Okay. So like I said, our update is on the curbside and the curbside parking coordination that we have going on. The reason this came and happened is the bottom line is that it's a TSA directive that there are to be no unattended vehicles allowed at curbside at the airport, and that also includes the ground transportation loop curbside parking. And it is unattended vehicles will be towed beginning tomorrow. So it's an immediate removal if there is an unattended vehicle. So that's the directive from TSA.
Where will they be?
Yes, we're all going, we have always had an issue with towing.
And so we're working on doing a short tow at the airport, so they will be towed to another location at the airport. So it's not like they're going to go to another lot in Basalt or anything like that. We're working on towing them right to a location at the airport, so it's right there. The problem is unattended vehicles right at the curbside. And so that's unacceptable to TSA, so this is where this is coming from.
George, go ahead.
Isn't there sort of a time frame that's allowable? Lots of airports you could pull in and drop your passenger off, go in and help with the luggage, and come back to your vehicle?
I don't know of any airport that you can actually do that at. So I've worked at a few, like at Denver. I've been through LA. I've worked at Fort Collins, and it's always been at the curbside, you have to drop off and you have to go. If you were to go inside and help your passengers, you can park in the parking lot and walk in with them and help them with their baggage that way. And that is something that we also offer at the airport, is we do have parking at the airport that they can go and park their car for free for an hour for right now, and assist with the luggage and walk in with their passenger.
So you'll have designated spots at the short-term parking just for that purpose?
It's not designated, no.
So it's just if it's available?
That's correct.
Okay.
Rachel?
Yeah, I was going to say, if we're launching this tomorrow because of TSA and it's mandated on us, we need to make some signs, even if they're temporary signs on poster board that are large and displayed, and will either designate these 8 spots closest to the walkway for, passenger pickup, and let people know they can't leave them, quote, short term for 24 hours, 48 hours in those spots. And we need very large signs as you turn into the traffic circle that TSA demands immediate towing of unattended vehicles.
Yes, ma'am.
And have that, just very prominent. I hate to sound silly about it, but I recall down at the post office in Mill Street, when the city first made that a 3-way stop, they put up double stop signs because they didn't think people would see it or notice it. And those were up for a good year. There were this huge double-size stop signs, 2 in a row. And we're going to need that. And we do have our people out there, the parking attendants, and I would suggest that we double up with staff for some of the busy times and make sure they're going over and telling everyone as they get out of their car that you will be subject to tow because of TSA immediately.
Yes, ma'am.
And we just need to do everything we can for our customer service and to not tow cars to the
Well,
extent
let me
humanly
clarify,
possible.
we're kicking in the towing tomorrow, but we've been doing the no parking for a couple of weeks now. TSA mandated we do it immediately.
Right.
And and I think we've already worked on people being there and signage and educating the people who are used to being able to pull up and park and run in.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think we're already in that process. As far as reserving spaces in that short term, that's full all the time anyway.
Yes, it is.
So I'd hate to hold spaces there when we're already so short of parking. For example, if nobody uses them, those places are sitting empty, and that's going to be really frustrating for people who are trying to find a place to park.
Okay, but what if you go and you just drop your 12-year-old off to go on a flight and to get their own tickets, and you can't leave your car for a minute, and you're supposed to now go and drive and park somewhere in long term and come back around?
Well, that's a good example, but I mean, how many?
But that is the example, and that we have a lot of seniors, we have a lot of people who are getting on those planes with a broken leg.
There's handicap parking right there.
If it's not parked up, I mean, we have to have an accommodation of drop-off parking.
Well,
And it sounds like we don't, unless somebody stays with that car. And, I suggested at the last meeting when John brought it to us, and I realize it's difficult for all of us, Patty. I mean, nobody wants to say it has to be this way or that way, but TSA does tell us that. And I asked, can we look into the idea of car minders, that somebody is there, you've given them your key, they know you're there, and somebody is watching your car. Does it have to be the owner of the car with the car? What are the rules regarding that?
And I'm working with TSA on that
Okay.
because I actually watched the
Meeting.
meeting, yes, ma'am.
Good.
And so I'm bringing that to the attention, but I don't know that they're going to be very receptive to something like that because it is kind of more the ownership side of things.
Yeah.
It's what you might have in your car that's at risk.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then maybe it's a discussion more about a valet pull over and park.
Discuss that.
So.
Right. So to address some of the things that you were talking about, I do have this slide of the things that the airport has done to reach out to the community and the things that we've done. So on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the local media, we have handed out or put the information out about what's happening at the airport. And that's been ongoing for a couple of weeks now. It's been in the Aspen Daily News 2 times. It was Monday, 12/17th. We ran an ad. It will also run again on December 28th. And then the Aspen Times is Friday, 12/21, and Wednesday, 12/26. It's been on public radio multiple times during the day on drive times, and then again on Facebook, Twitter, and our website. We have a webpage banner installed on our website. We're working between the Pickens County porters and the hoteliers to work on assisting people with their baggage to get their baggage out to the limos, the hotels, and taxis. We are distributing a curbside information card to everybody that comes up that notifies them of the directive of TSA. On the back, there is a map that gives them the options of where they can park and also utilizing the intercept lot if need be for kind of like a cell phone lot like they do at Denver. We do have on-site presence. We have multiple coordinators that are out there walking around and informing everybody. We're increasing that staffing so that there is a broad stroke so that everybody's getting caught. We are going to have a tow truck stationed at the airport because again it is immediate removal from that parking space if it is unattended. The policy is coordinated, supported by the legal and PCS, so we do have the authority to just tow, but we're not towing off-site, and we're moving it to someplace on the airport. We are meeting with the ground transportation to provide mitigating impacts. We've increased the signage out on the terminal or inside the terminal out in the parking lots so that everybody can see that, and it does notify them that there is no unattended vehicles, your vehicle will be towed. There's many signs in the ground transportation loop and along the curbside for the general public. As we update things, we are emailing everybody and letting them know what we have done and what's being implemented. There are now new PA announcements within the baggage claim area that no unattended vehicles and what will happen there. And we have now also installed a ground transportation info podium that we are staffing. And so people can know in real time, we can let them know when a hotel or a taxi or a limo has arrived in the ground transportation loop. So if they come to us, we can say, oh, yep, it arrived 5 minutes ago. Please step outside. These are just some pictures of, this is ideally what type TSA would like to see. They aren't big.
Nobody anywhere.
Yeah, well, they're not, ideally, when it comes to the cars, they'd rather just see people flow through, drop off, and leave. That's the safest measure that they provided for us. So, but that sign right there, I guess we should have had a picture of it, but it does say, that's where it says no unattended vehicles, you will be towed. And again, this is the ground transportation loop. It also has the signs in there that say no unattended vehicles. To help assist the passengers as they get off of the aircraft, this is when you depart your aircraft and come through into the baggage claim area. We're now putting signage here that shows that your local ground transportation will be out the doors. And we have placed these signs up in the rafters that hang down, very visible. They're orange, very bright, to guide as you go through. And then, And then as you go through, this goes out and it shows where they are standing and stationed so that you can arrive. We will have the podium also stationed right there.
George, and then Steve, I think.
Yeah, you know, obviously we're going into one of the busiest times of the year here for Christmas holidays, and I think customer service should be paramount.
Yep.
For all of us to be considering. Is there normally during this time of year a deputy sheriff deputies out there?
There are deputy sheriffs. They come in periodically.
Okay, because I could just see we could have some confrontations.
Right.
And it would be good to have a deputy out there to help ease those
Tensions.
issues.
Yeah. And we are looking at increasing that presence just for those. It is a customer service presence that we would like.
You have those peak arrivals.
Yes, we do. You know, we do get busy first thing in the morning, and that starts at 5 o'clock in the morning, but the peak arrivals when the airplanes are arriving and departing at the same time is when it gets really interesting out there. So,
Do you think Steve had a?
Yeah, I have a
Yep.
couple of points.
Okay.
First of all, I've been shocked that people were allowed to leave their car there unattended. Because you go to any other airport that I've been to, and it's, you can't leave an unattended car. You get there, you unload the stuff, you say goodbye to your people, and you
drive.
leave.
Yeah.
So then, moving forward, I think if we have some good signage there, if someone's car does get towed, how to let them know how to retrieve their car. What steps, where do they have to go? What do they have to do to retrieve it?
When that happens, and again, the airport property isn't a very big property, and so it would be very close, and we will have that personal interaction with the person to let them know this is where it's located, it's been taken over here. So we do have a designated
Cost?
area.
Cost
I'm
for
sorry.
them to get their car back? What's the cost?
So there is no cost. We are towing them, but
Okay.
they will be towed, and
Okay.
there will not be a cost.
Then a couple of proactive things. If there was a arrival and departure electronic board outside, because some people, they'll pull in, they're gonna run inside to see if the plane, see what the timing of the plane is. If they could see it right from the curb,
Yeah.
that would be a public service, and it would prevent some people from
Leaving their cars.
panicking and trying to
Yeah.
run in real quickly to see if the plane's
Correct.
Or whatever.
And I know not everybody does have cell phones, but the Aspen Airport website does have updated flight information constantly, and it will let you know of delays and early arrivals or anything like that, and it's clearly displayed there too.
We should put some notice of that up.
Yeah. Then the other thing, in the short-term parking, people have the option to go in there and park for free for an hour and leave their car and go. It's just 50 feet further to walk over.
Correct.
But maybe we should have some designated sites on the closest to the terminal for 15-minute parking or whatever, some really short-term free parking. Because if someone goes in there and then there's no parking places, then that's not an option for them.
Right.
So that would be something to look at and maybe figure out a way to designate a few sites there that people could leave them, run into the terminal. And
Yeah. And like in the short-term parking is what you're
yeah, in the
mentioning?
short-term parking lot.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, we will hear complaints.
Yeah.
Because that parking lot is full all the time, and people are they're parking everywhere. So if we designate spaces and they're not utilized, that 8 of them or 5 of them are not utilized and they can't park there, we're going to hear about it. We know the nature of the beast out there. We will hear about it. I did hear from an employee out there who said that people are parking in the employee lot because there's such limited parking in the long-term and short-term. How can somebody park in the employee lot? Don't you have to have a pass to get in and out of the employee lot?
Correct. So we're actually using that for an overflow parking. I think that was brought up at the last meeting.
Because the employees are saying that they get to work and they don't have a place to park.
Actually, we've increased that last year, and then we increased it again. I think John brought that up at the last meeting with
I'm
you
sorry, I
guys.
wasn't here, but I just got the call.
Oh, yeah, about the overflow parking that we increased by 50 parking spots on one of the fingers that we have out there.
Well, that was a fear expressed by an employee that this new change, even though this employee has worked at the airport for many, many years, so he should know that, we've been lucky to have this this parking availability right in front for way too long, because it's, we all know every airport you go to, there's a sheriff knocking on your window telling you to move along, so.
Yeah. And a lot of those airports will cite you. If you leave
Oh,
your
yeah.
vehicle, they'll put a citation on your car.
At John Wayne, though, they have valet. It's interesting because those valet parking, those cars stack up. Sometimes there are 20 or 30 cars
Need to
stacked
get
up.
parked.
And you're wondering how they can, valet, and then boom, So that's interesting that they allow them to do that.
Yeah.
Greg?
I was just thinking, regarding the towing, you said the customer doesn't have to pay for their car being towed, so that means we're paying for it.
Yes.
I would love to offer the option of a valet service so the customer could pay $10 or a tip or something to a valet to move the car, and that might actually either pay for the cost of the towing for the cars that get towed or at least reduce our costs. So it doesn't become something we have to fork out for a tow truck for everybody who doesn't feel they have an option. So let's see how it goes. You guys clearly have a good handle on this.
Well,
I'd like to see just, maybe down the road, that's an option that we consider.
Yeah. And, this is just kind of an uncomfortable transition from something that we've
Right.
always been doing to something that we should have been doing. So, and it's going well. We kind of are getting a little bit of pushback right now.
How
So
many cars have you had to tow so far?
we haven't done any
They're
towing
just
yet.
starting that towing.
Yep.
Perfect record.
Yeah.
So and the thing to take into consideration with valet is where then are they going to
Where
park?
are they going?
Exactly.
Right. Short-term parking, the overflow,
Yeah.
something, just thinking that may be an
Yeah.
option rather than having a tow truck there billing us $100 an hour or whatever it is to,
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to be paying for it.
Yeah.
Rachel, go ahead.
I'm just thinking, again, as others have said, it is a super busy time of year coming up here. Are there additional messaging we're trying to put out about the limited parking particularly through the ACRA, they have a really good email to all their real estate clients, pop-up message, A, don't leave it to the last minute, and B, there may be no parking available when you get to the airport.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Consider alternate means of transportation. The hotel guests tend to be in a courtesy van or returning a rental car or friends dropping them off, but it's more the locals who just aren't aware of it, and we should really think about PSAs, even to the Glenwood paper or the Soper Sun, things like that. Try to get it out throughout the valley.
And we do provide that information on our website. We'll do a social media, Facebook
Yeah.
and Twitter. And I know not
But
everybody's
those people have
savvy
to be
those
looking
kind of
for those things. This is more finding groups like the ACRA and the
Yeah,
Snowmass
ACRA
Village
will put it on their
that will
website,
get it
too.
out to people
Good idea.
more directly.
I think, because I don't look at any of those social media
Me
sites
neither,
at all.
yeah.
But I do have Pick and Alert, and I think that's when I've been notified.
So have you been getting that? Because that is something that we have also been utilizing to get that information out as well.
Because we want everyone to sign up for Pick and Alert regardless for many, many reasons. So this is just another way to be able to find out about what's going on at the airport.
And it is a very real-time alert that goes out.
Right.
I mean, we get notified from our parking, and then then it goes out.
Yeah, and you guys have done a great job with promoting the airport overall. I mean, this is more technical and management issues today. But perhaps working with Pat Bingham and talking to her, they still have the skin ads on the onlines of the daily news and things, and it's talking about the history of the airport and things like that. Over the holidays, that message should be changed to extremely limited parking. You may not find a place, but we should change that message up for over the next 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
And do
We
we
already
have a
have ads
runner
running,
on the TV station? Is there a runner on that? Is that on that?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah, on the
I haven't
flights.
been bored enough at night to watch that, which planes are flying and which aren't, so I haven't paid
Yeah.
any attention.
Yeah.
All right, you want to continue since we've,
Sure. So it's just an outline and overview of what we just went over. So again, no unattended vehicles at the curbside. That's the public, and that is ground transportation. That third bullet is actually cannot be met inside the terminal. I mean, it can. There are other options that can be provided, but unfortunately, it's the hoteliers or somebody would have to bring a second person. That
To
person
stand there with the sign.
To stand there in the sign to meet that person. We're trying to provide them maybe some ideas of let your guests know beforehand, before when you're booking, maybe if you can coordinate through cell phones or something. We're trying to figure out every option that we can so that there is that customer service aspect that is expected here at this airport. That's not lost on us or anything.
most airports, to walk outside to find your ground transportation.
Yes, ma'am.
Like everybody meets you and say, we're going to the, Ramada.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's that ground transportation that you'll see at the other airports, and they'll walk out and you can see that there's a ground transportation area, and that's generally where they're waiting.
So do we have any other cogs in the complex gearbox of airport security? I like that
There's
statement.
all kinds of
I like that
Trying to
statement.
figure out what the acronym meant.
Council of Governments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we could have picked a better time.
We could have. TSA could have picked a better time, right?
No, they picked the time. They
Yeah.
wanted to pick the time.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. Wanted to give you that update and let you know.
So
We're
for all
working
of
on it.
those who are watching Grassroots, do not park in front of the airport. It's a drop-off only, no unattended vehicles, or you will be towed, and it's not coming from us, it's coming from the Transportation Security Agency, Authority?
Administration.
George?
Lost my thought here. How many flights are overnighting now?
8.
8, and so from like 8 to 10 in the morning, there's a lot of flights going out. I guess what I'm trying to get to in terms of trying to get through security, when there's going to be a lot of flights leaving at the same time, that should be an ongoing message as well. Get to the airport, how much earlier because of trying to get through security.
And that is an interesting aspect with the increase of our flights and the overnights that are staying there that will pick up the passengers and take them out in the morning. And I think our flights increase tomorrow. They increase significantly
Again for the
tomorrow.
season.
And
36 flights
we'll
a
go
day.
from, we'll have those 7 to 8 flights all within almost an hour. So from 7 to 8 is 6 to 7 flights, and then there's one more at 9 o'clock. So it will be very packed at the airport during that first hour. Everybody's going to be checking in all at the same time. And so the suggestion is to get there as soon as possible before your flight.
Well, I mean, as soon as an hour and a half, at least an hour.
I would say an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's a limited space in there,
Very.
and trying to get everybody through there.
Right.
Okay,
All right.
have fun.
Thanks.
You might just have to come out and watch the entertainment.
Come on out.
Starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you so much for
Yeah.
more of the rounder information of what you've done to get people ready for this. We didn't have it in our packet. It just said airport
Yeah.
presentation packet to come. But I can see you've been proactive, and I appreciate that very much.
I definitely would give Accra a call and see if they can blast it out.
Yes, we
And
will.
there's the Aspen Lodging Association also.
Yeah,
Accra
yeah.
may have some ideas to help out.
Okay.
That's what they're there for. That's why we're members.
We'll reach out to them.
Okay, everybody good?
And Snohomish
Great.
Village.
Add one last thing is I'm just wondering if at some point we're going to want to ramp up a little ambassador program for a time like Christmas when there's so much going on. Maybe there's an opportunity to just reach out a little bit more to the community, visitors and locals alike, who are trying to get in and out and ease the pain somehow. Just thought. Haven't put any more thought in it than that, but
I think Accra does have
Has
that.
Yes, they
has
do.
the ambassador program.
okay.
Yeah, and I
With
think
the
they do
ski
ramp it up during the holiday.
Holiday,
Yeah.
so I knew it was a good idea.
Yes, that's such a good idea. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we are going to move along to our review of future agendas. So Phyllis, do you have anything for us?
I do not at this point, from what's in the packet.
I do,
Okay.
as always. I just, on the 18th of, no, on the Monday, January 7th, it says the Basalt Mountain Family Health Grand Opening is from 8 to 6.
It's an all-day-long festivity. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, is there a time that we need to be there for a ribbon cutting or something?
I'll
Or do
find
we
out.
have to go for the whole day and hang out?
That, but
Could you
find
give
out.
us a window of something so we can all be there?
Great.
And the other question I had, and I think this is of importance, is the special meeting we're having on January 8th. We've got an hour, and you were all here except me for that first discussion on Willoughby Ponds. Is that going to be enough time?
I hope so. I think we're down to final matters.
I'm gonna watch the video over the holiday when I'm done watching the airport channel. All right, just want to make sure with you guys that that's
Yeah,
going to be
thanks for
okay.
checking in on that.
And then,
I mean,
Phil,
Patty, we actually have till noon, per se.
yeah, we've got some flexibility there, yeah. If we need to. Unless something fills in. I've asked John to keep it kind of open for us. And then on the 22nd, the work session, we can actually, Phyllis, we can start that one earlier. There's not an ACRA meeting that day.
Okay.
So if need be, we could start it at 10. The ACRA meeting is on the 27th. It's on the last, I think it's the 27th, the last, must be the 29th, whatever the last Tuesday is of the month. So that would be the 29th. So that meeting has to start at 11.
Oh, that's the fifth Tuesday, so there is
We won't
no
have a meeting anyway. Okay, perfect.
about that?
That's right. I'll have a meeting, nobody else will. Okay, that's all that I had on future agenda. Steve?
On Tuesday, January 8th, we have all the board reports listed, which we just did board reports, and none of the groups are meeting in the meantime. So doing board reports at that time doesn't make sense. The only thing to me that would make sense would be if we use that time with Kelly there to go over tell what the different organizations do, just give a an educational thing for Kelly. Well, it'd be for all of our
Well,
benefit,
we're
but,
doing it at 1 o'clock. We're doing board appointments and discussions.
yeah, so I just feel those board reports are not necessary.
Yeah.
So maybe add a little more time to the board appointments and discussion.
And if we spend,
And-
I mean, we should spend time then going through things
That's
with
yeah,
Kelly.
that's,
Yeah.
I'm sure Kelly will ask her to attend.
Based on when the boards meet, should that be a particular
Kelly will be here
Tuesday?
because she'll be sworn in by that time.
But a particular Tuesday of the month, is there a better, should board reports be at the end of the month, is where I'm going, for any of the meetings
Yeah.
that happen during the month,
Yeah.
as we schedule
That'd be
them?
a
We're
good
trying to
idea.
get them back on,
And
On
back
track.
board.
yeah. Okay, so,
The one thing, I don't know the schedule, but as it was in the past, is like last time, I think Greg had to leave almost immediately to drive down for CMC's or CCI's new commissioner orientation. So I don't know. That's something to check in with John Peacock as to whether she's leaving that afternoon to go right to that, or whether she'll be there for that full meeting.
Right, so the 19th to the 22nd.
we'll work on
Isn't it
coordinating
later?
that.
I think it's, yeah, I saw it somewhere. and I
Isn't it
can't
the
remember.
Yeah, it
19th?
was-
Might be 19th to the 22nd.
Oh,
Yeah,
and,
I don't know.
it's the
I
9th
didn't
through
track
the
it.
11th, the new
9th to the 11th,
commissioner.
thank you, okay.
So it is
It's the
pretty
next
much
day.
immediately, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
That's where I saw it.
we'll have to see what the weather's like and everything else, you know.
Well, I think she's gonna wanna be here for board appointments. That's the first thing on the agenda. So let's just pack in the whole discussion on that 1 o'clock slot.
And we'll add a little extra time on that for explanations of what all
All right,
those
Steve,
boards
did you
are.
have anything
Yeah,
else?
well, I would suggest that Kelly meet with staff to go over. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of board appointments that she's going to be able to serve on because of existing ones, but rather than us spending time, I think she could just spend time with staff.
She's already setting up meetings with, I think,
point.
both
Yeah.
of you and John. So just add that to your discussion topics. It's a good idea, George. All right, anything else? So we have 15 minutes. We're going to open up some open discussion so we can, they've been adding a lot of things to our exec this afternoon, so we're going to try and give us a little more time there.
That I have a couple on. Since we're talking about changing on the board the designation for the chair and vice chair, okay, I'm gonna get challenged. Can I do the
I'm gonna
Elmo?
put it up on the screen. Oh, Elmo.
And then you have to switch
Ancient
that one in front
technology.
too to Elmo, the big TV.
Oh, gotcha. That goes to there.
Well, if we end up with them on this one this time, that might be okay.
Okay, now I have to figure out where the Elmo is. Display control. No. I know I've done it before.
We'll just turn around.
Yeah, we can turn around and look at, look at the one over here.
We have made some changes over the years in the order. The order was to run through the districts as far as who's the chair. At this point, Greg Poshman is scheduled to be the chair next year. Steve Child would be the vice chair. As we go into the next year, then Steve's chair, and Kelly, serving in her second year, is the vice chair. So if this pattern works, and I gave you the pattern and how it changed through the years, if that works, then that's what we will make happen.
Well, in year 2001, I'm still going to be here.
2021.
Yeah, but you'll have just gone out of being chair, so you won't.
No, 2001. It says new commissioner, District
2021?
5. Oh, I see, District 5. year
That's
1, or
George's
District
district.
1,
Right.
okay. Or it'll
So
come back
that's
to
where
me
we go
depending if
5
we have
to
a new-
1. Right, because George's term
So if we have a new
limited.
guy come in for George, so we might flip it back to me.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
And we need to just we'll see how Kelly feels about 2-year
Right. But it's kind of easy for next year
Yeah.
Yeah,
because,
everyone has some experience, and
but
Greg's
we've
been
been
warming up.
we found that keeping the chart up to date and understanding where the changes are and when there's new commissioners coming and going has been really helpful.
Yeah.
So we're
And I
good.
think going forward, that looks good too, because Kelly she wouldn't be chairman until her third year then, and that gives her enough
She'd be
time.
chairman her
Vice chair
She'd
second
be
year.
vice chair
She'd
her
be
second
vice chair
year.
the
Chair her
second
third.
year, so she potentially could be
Yeah.
chairing a meeting then.
Clearly, that's been a discussion boards have had at the time when things seem to make more sense, whether it's somebody's totally new or, has other issues that have come up and they really don't feel they can serve fully. So it looks good, and future boards will work that out.
Okay.
You've been doing a great job as chair this year.
Thanks.
We hate to lose
It's been
you.
a long year. So that's done, and then the other one is our discretionary fund.
Discretionary fund. Current discretionary fund is $6,500 is available.
And you have a list of what we spent.
In past years, 2017, when there was a balance left, so you see the date of 12/19.
That was
where
the
it
last meeting.
Yeah, the Mine Springs Veterans Winter Games, Mountain Family Capital, Hope, the homeless shelter, and Lift Up. And I went and got 16 too. And this isn't divided out, but at the end there was the Hope Center, the food pantry, a way out, and homeless shelter. Each got $2,050, which equally split what was available. So if you have any
I
direction.
think George has some ideas.
Why is that?
Because you're the one who kept
Guess you
saying,
got your
when are we
hand
going to spend that money?
Well, I think we should consider a donation to the Aspen Institute for the Bauhaus celebrations. I certainly don't think we should be spending $5,000, but I would see
And you said,
$1,000 for that as part of the community effort.
you said 6,500 left with
65,
of
correct.
this year. And are there other, quote, pending requests other than the Institute that has asked us?
Not that I've been told. So there's
that I
nothing
know,
outstanding that you needed to make a
Yeah.
decision
Yeah, I
on.
haven't heard of it.
I agree with you, George, that 5,000 is more than the county does for things like that, but I would think about more like 2,000 as a more significant contribution
Well,
to
let's
the
find out what
larger
the
effort.
city did. I think the city just made
Yeah,
a
I
decision
mean,
on that.
6,500, so if we give 1,000, that's 5,500. So if we want to continue to support our traditional
Homeless shelter and lift up
homeless
food
and
bank.
lift up, and, for
Pine
this time,
Springs,
for the
Hope
winter
Center.
time, it just gives them less than 2,000 apiece, so
Well, how about 1,500 for the,
it's up to the board. I think 1,000 is it's sort of
meaningful enough?
meaningful enough
Yeah,
as
you
a
too.
contribution.
I would agree with
I'd rather do it
1,000.
to something for the needy.
I was thinking about, we could do a donation to Mountain Family Health for their construction, because I think they're still raising money for their whole construction, and that would be maybe 1,000 or something, but that would be a token thing, but it could send a good message to other donors to contribute to that.
Have we given anything to them so far, other than the
They
building?
contributed, yeah, they were on our list. We gave them something. a
Not
while
this,
back.
last year you gave 1,000 to their construction fund.
Right.
In 17.
I was going to propose that we do a donation for Mountain Family Health, and we earmark it for, the integrated health and mental health program is really kind of what is being pushed, and it's an important thing. If we to kind of aim it in that direction, just maybe to help them promote the integrated health care, or something like that as they're going forward.
I think they need construction funds to get
Yeah,
the
they need a building to do them
Well, they
in.
need a couple million, so 1,000 here, 1,000 there. Just
I'd like to put it to dental.
Yeah.
Well, the integrated healthcare, so dental, why not? Sure. And then also regarding the the Bauhaus history, I'm certainly in favor of 1,000. I would go a little bit higher. I'd join Rachel for 2,000 on that one, because I know so many entities in the entire community are involved in this, and they're all contributing something. So I don't think 2,000 is too much there. I was looking at other things coming down the road, wondering, do we need to put out a PR or marketing effort toward our building code changes? Do we need to, put more energy into engaging with the local real estate and building development community about what's coming down the pipe and how we've arrived at the conclusions we're we're coming to, can we put more money in a
It's
direction
built
like
the
that?
budget.
You know, my feeling is that on that, I appreciate the effort, but I think that's something to direct ComDev to do with some of their existing resources.
So they can go through their budget.
Yeah, you know,
Okay. That was one of my questions
if we're
yesterday.
feeling like they haven't gone far enough. I'm just trying to bring this back around. If we talk about the food bank, which is Lift Up, the homeless shelter, Mountain Family, and what were the other
Pine
traditional?
Springs and Hope
Hope
Center.
Center.
Well,
Mind Springs Health and Hope Center.
I know, but last year's list does not have to become
No,
this
well,
list year. I
no,
know.
I'm just saying traditionally, these are the
Yeah.
organizations we've done over the last, since
That's
I've
for
been
vets.
on.
multiple years. I know there was one year it was relatively depleted, just helping citizens with the fire.
Right.
So I'm just saying, how can we round that up? At $2,000 each for homeless shelter, Mountain Family, and the food bank, that doesn't leave $1,000 for Bauhaus. You know, so do we divide it all by a quarter? Do we want 5 groups at like $1,250 or $1,400 each, or we want 4 groups at like
Doesn't have to be even.
No, it doesn't, but we're all going to argue forever back and
Make it
forth
easy. Yeah, I get
about
it.
who, what.
Yeah, I still think
Rich
our
has
key nonprofit organizations, I think, are critical for this time of the year.
Yeah.
So I would not have an equal amount to the Aspen Institute.
Okay.
I would contribute to that, but I
Okay,
don't
so
see that.
now we're dividing the 5,500. How would you divide the 5,500?
Then I would do
let me-
that equal.
Let's break for a minute. Rich,
The only thing I might mention is that we have been working with Mountain Family on the construction side of things. We still are going to have a conversation on tap fees. We may be able to contribute in a different way there that could free up some of this donation money if you want,
Great.
to be spread
Yeah.
other places.
Focus
So-
on specific
Yeah.
things. Like for part of it, I wanted to bring up Mind
put
Springs
the list
is
up?
doing resilience training. They've introduced resilience training into our schools, which will be a third quarter program, and I know that costs money. And mental health resilience for our kids.
17 of the current.
Current,
It's
so we
current.
have the numbers of what we.
well, and I'd like to see 17, how we divvy it up.
Right. And the youth center is also introducing this resilience program. And I know it all costs money, and nobody's asked for any yet, but it couldn't hurt to help them promote it.
What you donated this year was $1,200 for the CC4CA lunch, $1,000 for Huts for Vets, the Basalt Peace Garden at the high school, $1,000, and $300 for the Mark Fuller retirement gift. So that leaves you with the $6,500
I don't want
this
to
year.
beat a dead horse, but I just think the holidays, we're coming to a winter time, we're coming to a critical time where people are need help, whether it be food or shelter or just mental health. And so the Hope Center, Homeless Shelter, and Lift Up, those are critical organizations that I think are going to be have their hands full over the next month
Do you
or
want to
so.
include Mind Springs there, too?
Mind Springs has done pretty well off of us. So if we left them out, it wouldn't be the end of the
Yeah,
world.
I'm agreeing with George very much, and I think we just need to keep it in context mentally that our community just passed the Healthy Community Fund renewal, and they're seeing significant grants to each of these programs for the value they have. We're not going to create or institute or really fully seed any new projects that those groups haven't already presented during their request for funds and outlining their own work plans for the next year per se. But further endowing these agencies that are direct, immediate service in times of need, I think is kind of what George is getting at. And so I would support dividing that balance between, the homeless shelter, the Lift Up, the Hope Center, and if people think Mind Springs is also of assistance during this time,
Sure, they
those
are.
four.
They certainly
And so mental health, food, and shelter.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's
The only other thing that we haven't talked about is the fund for the fire victims from the Lake Christine fire, and I don't know how that fund is doing, and if they still need money for that.
That gentleman who lost his house, there's been significant amounts of money raised.
Yeah.
Like hundreds of thousands, I think.
Yeah, I
So-
have not heard.
I don't know.
And I don't know about the Hispanic family that the rental house that burned. I don't know what that fund is. I know that all the fire departments have pitched in.
We probably would have heard from him, I think.
Yeah.
It's always a concern.
I appreciate you raising that, but I don't have enough information about it.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the Lake Christine fire, we have a friend who lost her home in the Paradise, California fire,
And it really-
along with 3/4 of the rest of the town all lost their homes, and that's huge for them, and we were really lucky in the Lake Christine fire that there wasn't more disruption than there was.
Okay.
So did I hear anything for the Bauhaus?
1,000
No.
for Bauhaus.
1,000.
We're splitting 5,500 between Lift Up, Homeless, Hope Center, and Mind Springs, so that's $1,375 apiece.
And Mountain Family Health is,
Yeah, because Rich said that we have got other avenues.
We'll
in
try
which
and
to
find other
contribute.
ways.
okay.
Okay.
That feels good. I like it.
All right.
That
Got it.
feels good for sure.
We have 1 minute.
Okay.
Rachel, quick. No,
Yeah,
we
thank you.
have-
First, I just want to let the board know that the Club 20's legislative session is going to be January 24th and 25th, if anybody wants to put it on their agenda for going down to Denver and talking to the legislators and seeing what's going on in the session. Secondly, I'll be really brief, but yesterday I was attending a meeting in Denver that Governor Hickenlooper and Governor-elect Polis had convened for an hour-and-a-half discussion about why the transportation measures failed, why the education measures failed, and where does it go from here. It was very interesting because they had the main campaign organizers over the education campaigns for the past 10 or 12 years, Raleigh Heath and Mike Johnson, and the current leaders, and then the 110 team, all talking about what were the obstacles that they failed to overcome in Colorado to succeed and what it would take in the future. It really was not very interactive. It was mostly this panel discussion. But Governor-elect Polis announced, and it may have been prior announced, but really rolled it out more to this group, that Kerry Kennedy is going to be an Office of Long-Term Fiscal Outlook, kind of a new, different from the Office of Budget Management, kind of Office of Fiscal Policies. And I think they'll be tackling issues such as the Gallagher dilemma, Tabor dilemma, and they said they will be probably convening quarterly meetings going forward from here with that initial group and also with other leaders across the state to see if planning for 2020 to be able to pull us out of this kind of financial thicket that we're in between all the different constitutional amendments. So I'd imagine Pickens County will have representatives there. I was invited as a CCAT representative, and so was Tim Mock from Clear Creek County. But that's the update. They're thinking they're going to have their next larger group meeting in March.
Okay, Steve, and then we're going to break for lunch.
So I also know that Wade Buchanan is going to be Governor Polis's policy person, and he also held that position for Roy Romer when he was governor. Wade Buchanan has been the aging coordinator for the state government, and he's only been in there half a year about, and now they'll be looking for a new aging coordinator. Wade used to work or run the Bell Policy Center, and he's a really good policy person, so I think he'll be a good connection. I know him personally through the SAPCA committee, so
Oh, nice.
that would be a good connection with the governor's office.
Very good.
Okay, we ready?
we're off.
Grassroots, we are off until 1 o'clock.
And I will not be returning at 1. I have a doctor's appointment, so I'll be a little late
Okay,
at best.
we will fill you in. I will fill you in every detail. grassroots? All right, welcome back. Today is Tuesday, December the 18th, 2018. This is a work session of the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners. We are convening our meeting again. It's 1 p.m., so please introduce yourself for the public record.
Ann Driggis, Finance Director. Julie Hughes, Chandler Asset Management.
Scott Prickett, Chandler Asset Management.
Tom Oken, County Treasurer.
Well, welcome. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. As you may remember, several months ago, we came before you to discuss the transition between Tom, who, as you know, is retiring as treasurer, and transitioning his duties to myself, finance director, and will become finance director and treasurer. Part of the transfer of duties included the substantial investments that the county has, and we decided that it would make sense for us to employ a professional investment advisor to advise us on these and manage our investments. And so we went through the RFP process and selected Chandler Asset Management, Julie and Scott here. And we have, over the last month or so, Tom has been working to transfer the assets under their management. And the purpose of this meeting today is to introduce you to Julie and Scott and Chandler Asset Management, have them make a short presentation on current economic conditions and their thoughts on the strategy for investing the county's funds. And then we will present to you a proposed revised investment policy that dovetails better with our new strategy for investments. So that's our plan for the next half hour.
And those pictures are gorgeous.
Well, it is our Colorado.
Yeah. So if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Ann. So again, my name's Scott Prickett. I am a portfolio strategist with Chandler Asset Management, sit on the executive team. I wanted to give just from 40,000 foot a brief background on Chandler itself. It was started in 1988 by Kay Chandler. She had worked on the other side of the ledger, if you will, for both the county of San Diego as well as the city of San Diego. And I know we take pride in a woman at that time, saying, hey, I think I can do this as well, if not better. And that's proven to be the case. So here we are, many moons later, and we have about $16 billion in assets under management. The vast majority of that is for the public sector, such as yourself. The business grew up for the first decade in California primarily, but recently, if you want to define it as the past 10 years, we've had a significant expansion in Colorado. Julie and I joined Chandler about 5 years ago. I had been in the business for about 33 years now, and first started managing public sector investments as an investment officer in Boulder, actually for the city of Boulder back in about 1991. And then really exclusively in the public sector since 1994, when I was hired to really get an investment management arm of a firm located in Denver started. And so then I was head of a group in Denver for a while, and I worked closely with Julie, and we decided to come to Chandler. You learn a lot about firms when you compete against them, and really there was just one decision for us. And so with that, I will turn it over to Julie.
So similarly, I've been in the business about 25 years and really enjoy working with the public sector. We've really focused on operating funds for public entities, the short-term funds that that come in through tax dollars and so forth, but I also have an extensive background prior to doing that with tax-exempt bond proceeds. So working with entities on investing those bond monies as well as hedging tax-exempt debt and working with every aspect of tax-exempt debt, done credit analysis on municipal bonds and really understand the sector very, very well. And so if you ever issue bonds, that's something that we can help with as well. But we'll be focusing really primarily on the operating funds here and
really enjoy that as far as working with you guys and the rest of the public sector here in Colorado.
All right.
I think that's
So-
about it.
With the framework that Ann provided, we typically provide anywhere between 2 or 4 presentations a year for the cities and counties that we work with in Colorado. So we're open
Is his
to.
mic on?
Oh,
Is the red light on?
Red light.
Yeah, it was on.
yeah, okay. I'll
We
speak
do that all
louder.
the time. He always
Get it
shows mic,
closer.
it has
There we
okay.
go.
What's whose mic?
So today we'll provide a real close approximation, if you will, for the typical economic presentation we provide. Might be a little bit more brief, and we look for feedback relative to this body, the staff, in terms of, yeah, we'd like to see a little bit more, maybe focus, today we won't, but focus a little bit more on the locale and where we are relative to Colorado. But again, it's really a national review, and really what's going on nationally is what makes the decisions relative to how we manage the portfolio. But again, we still like to keep it local, if you will, and really reconcile what's going on nationally with also what's going on locally. So feedback is appreciated, questions during the presentation appreciated, and we get the gamut. Hey, we really like the economic portion. Can you expand it 10, 15 minutes? Or, hey, that was. I know you well enough now where, can you just keep that to 5 minutes? We were kind of bored the last 10 minutes, after about 5 years, and people are frank with you. But again, open to that feedback. We'll provide a brief economic presentation today, what we think is happening, and then also just some bullet points relative to the strategy moving forward, and then segue into the new investment policy.
Okay.
So it's an interesting day today. The Fed meets, and it'll be interesting to see what decision they make relative to just the small amount of volatility we've had, especially on the equity side of the marketplace. Not that that the fixed income side isn't volatile as well. We saw a big run up in rates, and subsequently over the past few weeks we've seen them tail off a little bit. So that also affects where we structure the portfolio and the decisions we make. So we expect the Fed to raise rates another 25 basis points, and we also expect them to be a little bit more dovish, if you will, meaning that they're likely to provide some transparency that hasn't been as hawkish, meaning that they were ready to, a couple of months ago, the marketplace, the messages they were sending is they were going to possibly raise rates 3 times. I even heard economists say they're going to raise rates 4 times in 2019. We don't think in the current backdrop it's likely to happen, especially on the inflation front, which I'll get to in a minute. But right now, our firm does not think it's likely that they're going to raise rates another 3 times in 2019. With what we've seen recently, there might even be a chance that they raise rates tomorrow. There's no guarantee of that. And then that's it for a little while. But the most likely probable track right now, based on Fed funds futures, is for them to raise rates 25 basis points tomorrow. And then the possibility exists, but again, that's just a possibility for a March Fed rate increase as well, another 25 basis points. Just to give you the how much it's changed over the past month, the futures contracts were trading close to 100% that they were going to raise rates in this meeting right now. Now they're trading closer to 70%, dipping down into the 60s, and we saw well above 50% probabilities for that March meeting. Now it's been all over the board, but I haven't checked recently, but it was around 20% last time I checked. I'm not sure if you checked today. But so it's changed dramatically in terms of expectations. So we expect a flattening of the curve. Again, the Fed has a couple of mandates on page 4. You can see the employment picture there, demonstrated by the non-farm payrolls. It's on the left-hand side, quite a volatile number. We most recent reading was 155,000. Expectations were for 198. And then on the right-hand side of your page, you can see the unemployment rate represented by both the U3 and the U6. So the headline number is what you typically see and what ABC World News Tonight reports at 3.7%. U6, 7.6%. The difference between those two, and really the Fed likes to look at the U6 as well, is the individuals that are working part-time, that want to work full-time, they get included in that. Also, if you've actively looked for a job for the last 12 months, but you've thrown up your hands and said, I can't find a job, and that's few and far between in this labor environment right now, but they get included in that difference as well between the 3.7 and 7.6% right now. What's interesting relative to the unemployment rate are the wage numbers. So we recently saw a slight tick up, 3.1%, but historically speaking, when you have labor markets this tight, it runs between 3.5% and 4%. So we haven't seen a real big tick up in wages, and until recently, over the past few months, it had been hovering closer to 2.5%. So we'll see if these recent numbers of 3.1% pick up into inflation. Also, some numbers that are interesting, I think, are if you have a 4-year degree and you're 25 years or older, the unemployment rate is only 2.1%. So really low. No excuse for your kids coming home and hanging out in the basement.
For my son and my daughter not to be working.
Exactly. And there's a record number of job openings, or almost a record number of job openings right now, with just a tick over 7 million job openings right now. Any questions so far? All right. The ever important inflation and our price target of 2%. You can see CPI on the left-hand side of the page there, and personal consumption expenditures on the right-hand side. The Fed's preferred gauge is PCE. Rarely, if ever, unless they get asked about it, do they mention CPI, Consumer Price Index. The most recent numbers that came out for CPI, 2.2%. Personal consumption expenditures, the most important number that they look at is core PCE, and that hasn't hit their target, or at least it briefly did at 2%, but now it's back down to 1.8%. Did you want to make any comments on inflation before I move on?
No, I think that pretty well covers it.
The rest of this I will go through very briefly. The ever important consumer. You can see retail sales on the left-hand side of your page, consumer confidence on the right. Consumer confidence really at historical highs still, 135.7. We'll see what those readings look like as we move into the first quarter and they start reading their 401k pages. That typically has an effect on the confidence that people feel. Retail sales in October were up 4.6%. There's mixed readings so far on the holiday and what's happening there on retail sales. Although on Cyber Monday it did set a record, I believe the number was 7.9 billion in sales on Cyber Monday. But we'll have to get through the entire season to get a true assessment to assess the success.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Will we see, it's interesting because it's a hurricane-related rebound. Will we see a wildfire-related rebound? On the massive wildfires and the devastation in California especially, primarily?
Did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and I think that's certainly something to keep an eye on. The hurricane impact was so broad in the Southeast and just overall oil-related. You know, there were so many disruptions in supply and in transport and so many sectors, and so we definitely see that. I think California is probably big enough that it may not warrant the same sort of impact in the national numbers that we're seeing, but it's something to keep an eye on, and I think we may see some sort of impact, especially as we see construction efforts to rebuild and some of those sorts of sectors as well.
Well, it'll be interesting with the unemployment rate so low and the stress on, we've seen it here with construction industries, having nobody put out a bid and nobody bids on it because there's nobody to work on it.
Right.
And everybody's so busy, so they'll probably be shipping people in from all over into some of those areas of California to help rebuild. But that'll take a little while to gear that up, I'm sure, because they have to go through. Well, now they're saying they're going to look at California with no more rebuilding in fire zones. which will be an interesting
That will be
takings lawsuit and take all the money out of California already.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So on to page 7. The economic activity, leading economic indicators rose 0.1%. You can see a really volatile number there. Chicago Fed National Activity Index, the latest number for the 3-month average, 0.31. We'll talk about that more in the future when we're here. The reason being is we get asked a lot recently, hey, when do you think the next recession is going to occur? I saw an interesting article just this morning where finally over 50% of CFOs for Fortune 500 companies think that a recession is going to occur in 2019. So that's definitely a change that we've seen recently. Most of the calls I've seen are for 2020. So that headline caught my eye because of the amount of information that we've read, and most of it points to 2020. But we'll see if that happens. And the reason that's relevant for the Chicago Fed National Activity Index is because it has a real strong correlation when you have a negative 0.7 number on this to recessionary pressure. So we'll keep an eye on what's called the CFNAI, Chicago Fed National Activity Index. Housing, page 8. Needless to say, to use Aspen as an example for the national average would just not be a good thing. It would distort it slightly. But supply has been an issue nationally on the left-hand side of the page there relative to housing starts, up recently 1.5%. But you'll notice that big drop-off. It's a deceleration, if you will, of home prices for the 20-city composite, and that's now been running year over year 5.1%. So we've seen a big drop-off, especially western cities like Denver being one of them. Denver, Seattle, San Francisco, although Las Vegas is still leading. There's still a deceleration in Las Vegas, Phoenix, so we'll watch this quite closely as well. There's a real strong correlation between home prices and what people see as, quote-unquote, money in the bank, if you will, through home equity and consumption and spending.
So new housing starts refer to stick-built, on-site construction rather than manufactured?
We've got both multifamily and single-family housing.
I just came back from a manufactured housing conference, and
Oh, okay.
it's in my brain the
Okay.
difference between an on-site or stick-built and a manufactured. And I think this just refers to new housing starts as to stick-built construction on-site.
The single-family housing starts, yes, and multifamily.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yes.
Because there's a big national
Yep.
trend growing to for off-site housing, modular, prefab, not stick-built. So that'll be
That's
interesting to
included
see
in
how those
these
numbers figure in.
Manufacturing is the next page. So you can see a couple of self-explanatory slides here relative to the ISM, Institute of Supply Management, running at 59.3%. Anything above 50% or 50 is expanding. Anything less than 50 contracting. So we've been above that 50 number for quite some time now. And then industrial production, self-explanatory graph there, the most recent reading at 4.1%. And then the ever-important GDP, most recent third quarter at 3.5%. It's driven by that top line, the top gray personal consumption expenditures. You can see it at 2.5%. So the bulk of that GDP number is made up of personal consumption expenditures. First readings we're seeing on the fourth quarter, about 2.4%. We expect a number close to 2.5% in 2019. But again, we've seen a lot of volatility lately. I haven't mentioned the tariffs. I haven't mentioned a lot of the hurdles that we're seeing in front of us, like China, some weakness there in the most recently reported data points. Globally, the Eurozone is not doing very well. I believe the latest GDP numbers in the aggregate for the 19 Euro countries there are 1.7%. So there's definitely some weakness globally. We'll see if the U.S. consumer can drag the world up like they have in the past, but that's questionable, I think, at best, moving into 2019. Any questions so far? Okay. And then finally, reconciling everything I just said to yields, and we'll talk a little bit more detail when we are managing the portfolio for you relative to decision making that we would go into in the next part of the presentation for the portfolio itself. But we've seen a significant drop off over the past few weeks in rate levels. Latest readings I looked at were 269 on the 2-year. Essentially the same on the 5-year, on the left-hand side of the page there, 269 on the 5-year, and a 286 on the 10-year that's dropped off from well above 3% recently. So we're seeing a flattening of the curve. We expect that to continue on the right-hand side of your page there, especially if we see benign inflation moving forward. I think the most likely item to push that inflation number is wage inflation that, again, is pretty low right now. Maybe the tech labor market would push that up, but I don't think the breadth of that sector of the economy is large enough yet to push that up significantly. So that's a typical economic presentation. Again, your feedback is appreciated into the future if you would like more specifically Colorado-related or longer, shorter. Be happy to accommodate.
Steve, go ahead, please.
Has our financial advisory board gotten this information, or will they be getting it as we move forward? Because it seems like a lot of the general economic information of how the economy's doing would be really important for them.
Okay.
And maybe they could even sit in on our meetings here occasionally when you're here doing a presentation.
Right, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. So we'll plan on incorporating that with Financial Advisory Board. As you may or may not know, we've actually been pushing them pretty hard lately and doing a lot of research, and the economic conditions question is one that we often seek their advice on as well. So to have the two resources for us would be great and meet. So next time we'll bring them in.
That's good to hear, because, members had called me about, we want something to do, so.
Oh, we're giving them something to do. Just wait until you see the result.
Well, it's good, because they were like chomping at the bit to do something, so, yeah, I bet they're happy, though.
But
They
we
like this.
did just recently, actually over lunch, discuss timing for the Chandler presentations, and decided, in general, twice a year probably, but for the summer one to do it in mid-August, which is just before when the Financial Advisory Board meets to make our local economic projections as well. So,
Perfect.
yeah, having them attend and tying that in would work.
Oh, they'll be
very
excited.
Yeah, they'll enjoy it.
Greg, go ahead.
Just a question regarding looking at the various policies of the administration, where like rolling back environmental regulation, or rolling back various restrictions across the board has been kind of an obvious policy. And I wonder is it possible to track economic activity to those specific things? Say we open up more public land to drilling. Mm-hmm. How does that affect job? There must be a correlation. I wonder if who's tracking it, and how closely can you tie it to various events regarding policy change?
Yeah, the answer is yes, but I think it's a long-term correlation. I think with what's happening, and I'll give it away. I try not to. I'm a tree hugger myself, so it'll be interesting to see. I think it's way too early to judge relative to just from a pure economic standpoint. Opening up new areas for drilling. Certainly, I mean, it's you don't even have to look at the numbers to know that a certain portion of the U.S. labor force is going to benefit from that. But there's always a give and take, and what's the negative of doing so? And it's a tough political decision sometimes in certain areas of the country, certainly to expand the solar part of energy generation and wind. but I think it has foresight to it, where we want to be in 10 to 20 years versus being solely reliant on fossil fuels. And so there's so many, there's that question you have is just so wide open relative to
Right.
the number of directions you can go. But yes, you can tie it to, I think regions. I think that's probably where you could look at it and go, wow, this is great. But then over the course of time, if you look back, 10, 20 years, maybe not so, from a big picture point of view. But it's definitely a long-term data gathering type of question. I don't know what you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the key areas that's going to be measured and that everybody's focusing on right now is how, and it's something we're going to be digging into very shortly here too, is how the tariffs are impacting various sectors. And, we hear anecdotes all the time from different municipalities that are building quite a bit, and they can't even lock down bids because prices of steel are going up so quickly. And, we hear a lot of anecdotal information, but we're really going to be digging into, okay, various sectors, auto sector, et cetera. How is that really impacting? I think it's going to take some time to really get the full impact, and of course, it's a moving target. But I do think it's an interesting look back, and it's something that we will be able to share at some point in time.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Any other questions at all?
In looking at doing our investment strategy for the county's money, a comparison of what's happening in Colorado versus the rest of the country would be, I think, be useful information. It's probably tracks fairly closely, but maybe the numbers are different. So if there's any easy way to track the differences between the national trends and Colorado trends, I think that would be useful.
Sure.
While you're on that topic, I'm thinking track Pitkin County versus other counties in Colorado would actually be very interesting as well. Only
You
because,
just find we're special.
well, we have a unique situation that we share with a couple of other counties.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see how, because that could clearly is going to drive state policy.
Sure.
Right.
If we're the only ones who are doing well, so to speak, relative to the other counties, that's going to affect all of us.
Yeah, great question. And, generally speaking, I think the key economic indicators are generally healthier in Colorado right now. The unemployment rate, inflation, if you look at housing market, et cetera, everything, GDP, everything is a better number than what we've shown you nationally. It won't always be the case, but we're happy to pull together some information for you from time to time to put some real figures on that.
An example, the ramifications of tariffs, just go well beyond just the black and white, in terms of how it's being presented. Just an example of that is, I didn't even realize this, that Denver and Fort Collins, the Front Range, has the 4th largest employment for the beverage industry in the whole country. And so when you slap, the tariffs on aluminum, it did really have an effect. And so a lot of the beverage, providers on the Front Range, Denver, Fort Collins, are hanging on by their fingernails just to seeing what's going to happen through the first quarter. So those are just some anecdotal stories that are interesting.
So we better buy up all that wine that comes in cans.
Or switch to
That.
bottles.
Switch to bottles, yeah.
So Scott didn't mention the stock market, but an interesting correlation for the local economy measured by sales tax is that every time the stock market measured by the S&P 500 has declined in a year, our sales tax in the following year also declined. It isn't, a quantity relationship, just a direction relationship. So, and obviously we've increased every year that the stock market has increased in the prior year. So depending where we end up here in a couple weeks, might give you some indication of what's going to happen next year. Even if the national economy is still stronger, we may see tourism
Well,
decline.
plus we're affected by the international economy.
Yeah.
Because we depend on those, and we're seeing a drop in reservations for this next week from South America. Because I think it doubled the cost to come from, I think it was Brazil to come this year. It was twice as much as it was last year.
Yeah, with the strong dollar, I'm not
Yep,
all that
yep.
surprised. And then you have economic growth around the globe in a lot weaker position
Yep.
than the U.S. So that's not all that surprising.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
love those types of statistics, That's interesting.
It's probably
Yeah. Well, we'll see,
just
Can I ask another question regarding our county? We just went through our budget process, which is so ably handled that we all feel like we're budget experts now, and
We
as
are.
should be, right? Thanks to Ann and
All those
Tom and
hours.
crew. And I know, it makes us all feel really great that we have a great cash reserve in the county, and I think is it the suggested cash reserve is about 16%, but we're something like 27 or 29 or something like that.
We're a budget expert.
So the question is, from our financial advisors and our
He just
investment
pulled it up
advisors.
on his computer.
I didn't actually. The question is, has it ever occurred, or have you ever been tempted to say, well, should we be investing those cash reserves in a different way, or is there a mechanism? I'm just trying to get a grip on would we be treating them differently, or depending on our cash reserve level, do we treat our investments differently? Do we take more risk if we seem like we've got a surplus of reserves? How do you guys think about this? I just shared my naivete about it.
It's a perfect dovetail into the investment
Ta-da,
strategy.
okay.
And, we do a lot of cash flow forecasting and so forth, so.
I think
You're
that's the
welcome.
perfect segue, and thank you for that question. So we'll talk a little bit about our thoughts on the investment strategy, but, one of the first things we've done before we haven't invested a dime yet, is to start looking at a cash flow analysis. And Tom and Ann have been working with us on that, and Tom has provided a lot of historical data. We usually look at least 3 years of historical data to really understand the seasonality, the high points, the low points, the ebbs and flows of the cycle, and then also to forecast going forward what's it likely to look like, and then how much of that should be invested in a core portfolio and how much of that should be left liquid. So the level of those reserves definitely determines what we do with the investment strategy. And it really, that first step is segmenting the portfolio into how much, and when I say liquid, the tenets of safety, liquidity, and yield are always followed, regardless of how far out we go. But it's segmenting that portfolio into what needs to be available every day upon a phone call, basically, at our fingertips for payroll, for, anything that would come up, and how much can we invest out a little bit longer? And when I say longer, it's not going to be 20 years. It's, 0 to 5 years, basically. So that's something that's a work in progress right now. I expect we'll wrap up that analysis in the next few weeks. Well, we have the holidays, but in the next few weeks and into January, we should wrap that up and come to a conclusion on how much should really be invested in securities in that core portfolio, and how much do we feel comfortable keeping liquid, keeping kind of a cushion as well. So that's one of the first things we've done, and then also review the investment policy to determine, what does Colorado statute allow, what is best practice, around the state, around the country, GFOA, various organizations, and kind of come to an agreement on, here's best practice, and here's what the county's comfortable with, and here's how we want to move forward. So that's kind of the background on what we've been doing before we invest a dime. So with that, I'll just go to this investment strategy piece here. It doesn't like Okay. Well, you don't see everything on here, but you see the most important parts, other than the words.
Yeah, there's bullets.
There's bullet points. So we'll just, I apologize. Let's try that again.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not picking them up.
It doesn't like my.
See, that's why I use paper.
Yes. It doesn't like
Telling
this.
me to go to technology, and I stick with the paper.
So, so we'll talk about the sector allocation first, your pie chart. So this is as of the end of 2017, but it looks pretty similar today in terms of how the county's investments are laid out. So about 40% in CDs, which are bank CDs and brokered CDs. You've got a little over almost 2.5% in U.S. Treasuries, about 12% in agencies, and then 45% in the local government investment pools. So that's a lot of liquidity, generally speaking. Not a bad thing necessarily, but the idea is perhaps not all of that needs to be kept in overnight liquidity. Some of that will be identified via this cash flow analysis to be invested in the portfolio. So what we've determined as a strategy is to increase the allocation to U.S. Treasuries and agency securities, which provides really helps meet the goals of the policy, old policy and new policy. Extremely safe, highly liquid. It provides additional liquidity on top of a CD, for example, and enhanced return. So that's really the order in which we think about things here. So more treasuries and agencies in the portfolio. And then we've also expanded the sectors, and I'll get to that in more detail in a moment when we talk about the policy.
I want to make sure I understand what agency refers to. What does that include?
So our federal agencies, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Farm Credit, and Home Loan Bank. Okay.
And when Julie talks about the liquid portion of the portfolio, that's really the local government investment pools. They're basically overnight funds we can withdraw immediately.
At any time.
Much there without having to sell security, which is what all the rest are, except for money market funds are similar to a local government investment pool, also very liquid. So in terms of managing this, what we're looking at doing is turning over to Chandler everything that isn't in the liquid pool. So, right off of that would be, 55% of the portfolio that Chandler would manage, and we would still manage just moving in and out of the local government pools.
Thank you.
So in addition to the treasuries and agencies, which we do envision being the largest portion of the managed portfolio, we've also proposed in your policy revision here to open up the portfolio to other sectors that are permitted by Colorado statute. So specifically very high quality corporate bonds, AA rated category only, high quality commercial paper, and municipal bonds, high quality AA rated municipal bonds, and supranationals, specifically the World Bank, which is a AAA rated institution. So, and we've outlined that in the policy revision, but all of this gives the county potentially greater diversification, which is protection for the portfolio, enhances the yield, potential returns, and provides a very high degree of liquidity within those security types.
So do you use that same sort of formula and allocation with the other government agencies that you work with?
We do, absolutely, yes. So the sector allocation is a big piece of it. The maturity distribution, do you want to talk about that, Scott, as the other key element to the strategy?
Your duration is essentially the most important factor relative to your returns. And our philosophy overall has been to identify the benchmark, which identifies the risks over long periods of time. We carry the benchmark back to we started in 1988. We have on many of the strategies we follow track record from either 10 or 20 years going backwards. So it's a repeatable process. We don't try and predict interest rates to any great degree. In my background, I saw some of the biggest mistakes at a couple of the firms I was with relative to, the decision is made to say, okay, we think interest rates are going up. We're going to keep everything super short, or vice versa. There's no crystal ball. No one knows where interest rates are going. I didn't mention this right out of school. I was lucky enough to start for PIMCO, what became the largest fixed income manager in the world in Southern California, and a fellow there by the name of Bill Gross. If it was earned or not, I don't know, but the bond king. So even the quote-unquote bond king, who was on TV every time I turn around, doesn't know where interest rates are going, and neither do we. Neither does the Fed. So that's why discipline is important, and duration, and how we target your duration, and all the public entities we manage across the country, but specifically in Colorado, will be so specific and so crucial relative to adding value to your portfolio. I mean, when we're here in a year from now, 6 months, yes, but definitely a year from now, 2 years from now, when you have the amount of time that Julie and I have in this business, and we always project ourselves in front of you a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and want to have a good defensible story no matter what happens to interest rates, no matter what happens in the economy. And so we put a bandwidth around ourselves in terms of where we target our duration. And duration is similar to weighted average maturity. They're correlated, but definitely not exact. Duration measures the interest rate sensitivity of the portfolio. So we'll structure the portfolio around a duration target, and then also, looking to add value relative to our sector allocation, and the duration, the maturity structure, because right now it's counterintuitive. I read off the yields at the beginning of the presentation, and it's like, okay, you have a 269 on 2 years, and you have a 269 on 5 years. Why in the heck would you go out 5 years? Well, history has shown that in these types of environment, if you stay disciplined and you stay to your strategy, and the vast majority of your portfolio is going to be 3 years and in. But even going out 3 years, where you've got that part of the curve that is at or below the 2 year, again, it's counterintuitive, but staying disciplined has proved itself for certainly the last 33 years of my career, and definitely the long-term performance of Chandler itself for the past 20 years. So we will take that approach, and also move the CDs as they mature over to that type of structure, and we'll definitely talk about that as we present in August to you, and then also after a year is in place, maybe January, February of next year, and show you that progression, and show you the cost benefit of what we're trying to do.
Great.
So with that, I think we'll just hit a few highlights of what we've done with the policy, which will enable us to put in place the strategy that Scott and I have described. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail. Ann or Tom, did you want to hit any high points, or do you want us to dive in?
Tom, do you just want to mention when the current policy and when it was last reviewed?
Yeah, it hasn't been changed since 2008, I think. Yeah. But the major differences they've actually already addressed, in that our current policy does not include allowing us to invest in corporates, repurchase agreements, municipal securities, or the World Bank, the supranational category. And the reason for that is all of those, although they are highly rated and permitted under Colorado law, is they do have some credit risk, meaning it's possible that one of those issuers could default. Everything else that we invest in, except for the local government investment pools, which are very short-term anyway, everything else we invest in is currently government guaranteed, 100% backed by the U.S. government. So there isn't really any credit default risk there. So given that, with their expertise, they do look at, behind the scenes at the actual credit of these issuers. And so that's why it makes sense that now we can diversify into some other securities, but we didn't have that in-house expertise before that, so we didn't want to go there.
Didn't want to risk it.
That's the primary difference in this. There are some differences in terms of term. Right now, we're limited to a 3-year term in our investments, and we're expanding that to 5 years. That's, as they said, mostly we're going to be within 3 years, but there are occasions when you might want to extend beyond that with the portion of the portfolio. So this would allow that. And the other major change is that the policy expressly authorizes our use of investment advisors and outside consultants to help us with to actually manage the investment portfolio for us. So those are the primary differences between the current policy and the new.
George?
So did you put together a sort of an annual goal in terms of return of investment?
Yes and no. So what we'll do is identify a benchmark that's a market published index that's commensurate with the risk tolerance of the county. So what we've talked about doing is starting with a 0 to 3 year Treasury index, which has an average maturity and duration of about 1.4 years, which would be a little bit of an extension from the duration of the portfolio currently. I think in the longer run, meaning as we see the Fed finish out this rate hiking cycle, and a year from now, maybe we might go to a 1 to 3 year benchmark, which has about a 1.8 year duration. So we're going to be not targeting a return or an amount of income, but we are going to be measuring performance vis-a-vis this market benchmark. And that also enables us to be measured against other portfolios, anybody out there with this benchmark, because it's a published index that's not biased, and you can get it off of a Bloomberg or a Reuters or whatever it may be. So our goal is to outperform that index that's agreed upon, and that should reflect the risk tolerance of the county. And the performance will be on a total return basis, but we also look at the yield very closely and the income generation. And so we always want to out-yield the index as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Steve, go ahead.
On the maturity distribution, you have about 1/3 is 1 to 3 year ones. And in our capital reserve, about 1/3 of our money is in stuff that we basically never touch. The table reserve and the different things on the bottom are the bottom of the barrel for emergency stuff that money sits there. And I presume that that's sort of the 33% that's invested in a little bit longer term. But are there any restrictions that we have based on Colorado statute for the use of the table reserve money specifically and the other reserve money? Are there differences in where our money what pool it's sitting in our budget?
No, not really. The table reserve requirement is just 3% of your fund balance, and it doesn't specify how that might be accomplished. In fact, actually, some say that their buildings and their capital assets can qualify as table reserve. So if they really needed to, they would have to sell that building.
Yeah, we're not
And the
doing that.
state themselves do that.
We just built it.
Yeah, so there is no specification.
Okay. So that will give us more options, and that's why going to 5 years instead of a 3-year is a possibility now. That we do have some funds that just sit there for rainy day, or really torrential downpour, rainy
Right.
day kind of
Yeah.
emergency. Okay.
And I would say that the maturity range of 3 years to 5 years will be used incrementally by us. Yes, the policy does allow for 5 years, which mimics, the state 2475-601 state statute for public funds. But we would probably, for example, you see an auction, and sometimes there's a great advantage to going, believe it or not, from 36 months to 38 months. So allowing to add that value there, or extending the duration slightly, maybe going out to 4.5 years or something like that, with just a small portion of your portfolio has proven itself over the past 20 years as well. But it's just incremental. I mean, the vast majority that you would expect to see, again, when we're back here in August and next year, would be 3 years and in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if I'm remembering back to 2008, the board needs to adopt this formally, the policy?
Correct, and we were planning on getting your feedback on it today and then presenting it to you for approval on January 9th.
Okay. I'm thinking, how far out is the night?
Yeah.
Where will we be then? Who will be sitting here? Okay. So does the board have any other questions or comments? I have one. What do you guys do for fun?
What? This is
They
fun.
spend all our money.
Oh my God.
This is what we're doing for fun.
I know, that's very sad.
That is a sad
But I
statement,
really
yeah.
appreciate the glossary, because that really is really helpful, because, a lot of these terms are not things we use in our daily language. So I really appreciate that being included in this.
Do you want to answer that question?
Sure. Yeah, I mean.
I love that. I've
Any-
never had that question. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything outside. I'm a big tennis player, love to hike,
Yeah, good for you.
travel.
And you guys are based out of Denver now, is that correct?
Yeah. I had split my time between Denver and Seattle. I was born and
Not
raised
bad.
in Denver, but not too bad cities to. And in that, I'm a passionate sailor. So.
Well, Seattle's a good place for that. I used to live there. So I have another question, though. What was the first name of the woman who?
Kay Chandler.
Okay, because my sister's a big businesswoman in Southern Cal, and I'm just wondering, I'll have to run this by her. She'll be very impressed.
It's an important question. Do you own your own sailboat?
I do.
Oh, boy, that's scary.
It is scary. It is scary.
Where's the bird?
A
Where's
lot of
it?
elbow grease. I have a Cape Dory 36. Yeah.
Oh, great.
And where do you have it birthed?
I have it birthed in, where Bainbridge Island is?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great.
So you know about just throwing money into a hole.
Oh, man. I'm glad my wife's not sitting here.
I used to live across from Vashon.
Yeah, I want to talk to her.
Oh, you can't talk to her.
All right. So, Ann, what do you do? We know what Ann does for fun, and we know what Tom does for fun. So they're always outside gardening, running, biking, hiking, skiing. So it's not a bad place up here. So thank you for coming to visit
Yeah,
us.
thank you very much.
We appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And we look forward to keeping that Financial Advisory Board very busy.
All right.
Okay,
And I'll bring
we
a
are
PowerPoint
moving
next
along nicely today.
Okay.
Thank you. I think Jody came here just in time to jump on board here. Thanks for coming in early, Jody. That was actually very informative. I'm like, whoa. Oh, look at that front door.
I like it just like that.
I know, me too. It's a beautiful picture. Beautiful picture.
So Jody Smith, I am the Facilities Director for Pitkin County. And today I'm here to talk to you about the courthouse renovation project and give you some updates about where we are and where we're headed so far. I just kind of wanted to maybe give you just a little reminder of who is on our team, because I don't work in a bubble here. We've hired Anderson Hallis Architects out of Golden, Colorado. They are our architectural team. And then we did do a full bid for our CMGC, Construction Management, and I forgot, General Construction, which is going to be FCI Constructors. They're already involved in doing all of our estimating. Right now, we are at, we just finished 100% of our DD design, and we're moving into construction documents, so I thought it was a good time to check in with you. Along with those people, we have also Ron Ryan, the undersheriff, is very much involved in our project. As you know, the sheriff's office is they're responsible for the security and safety of that building. So they're very much involved in this. I also have Susanna Reed, who is our County Historic Preservation Officer. She's been helping a lot with kind of not only the design, but the grant opportunities and helping us with that. And then I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see the rest of everybody. The Ninth Judicial Team is Judge Boyd, Lynn Reed, Tom Franklin, and Jonna Goldstone. Joe with the probation officer, or with probation, and Bill Brunworth with the district attorney's office. We did hold a bunch of individual agency or division meetings with the architect, and did some gathering of information, making sure that we were asking the staff, the users of the building, what they needed. And so we've incorporated many of their needs, and we have buy-in from everybody on that, with a lot of specific input and concerns from the judges. Judge Selden and Judge Ely were able to give us a lot of input. And we were specifically to that security and not mixing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as I go through. We are also working with Clausen and Associates has helped us get through some of our land use processes. We have MKO Strategies, who's our grant writer. And then I have Element Environmental, who just completed our asbestos and lead testing, which will be now put into the construction documents. So we're moving along. We're busy. We just submitted last week our land use application, and because we're doing a public process, that has been deemed accepted, complete, and so we will have a hearing on January 9th with HPC. And then they're putting this through as a minor project, and so we won't be going to city council. It will be an administrative approval through their community development director and HPC giving their input. So
Is this for the exterior and interior?
Exterior.
Just for the exterior?
Yeah, that's why because we're not really impacting that much outside. So, so we should have an answer from them by the end of February. And in the meantime, we'll be moving forward with our construction documents. We will have 50% completed construction documents here in the next 30 days or so. So we're moving along. And then I just kind of wanted to get you up to date on the floor plans. I have a hard question for you in here that we're going to ask you for some direction on. So with that, I will begin. So I've kind of already talked about this. We're talking about the floor plans, and then the north entrance exterior has an option that we want to run by you. And then, so this is our, is there a mouse? No. So this is the garden level plan. And I just kind of wanted to point out a few little things. Where's the mouse? Oh, there it is.
Is there one there? Is there one?
I can't really see it up there. So number one is where the district attorney or the sheriff's office used to be there, and that is going to become a break room. And then the two offices where the district attorney's offices are now will become two private offices for Alpine Legal Services. They are now leasing space in the courthouse rather than in the Health and Human Services. They have a very small waiting room. And this break room is really a break room for the entire building because it's all non-judicial. But it will not be a break room for the district attorney. They don't necessarily want to mix. So you'll see that they'll have a little kitchen in their own area. Number three there is just an open meeting room, just a small room for conferencing. Number four, you can see, if you look up at number 7 where it says jail, there's a green arrow, and I put the green arrow in so that you could see where the detainees are brought in and how this really changes the way we're operating and really keeping our detention clients out of the public. So they'll come in through number 7. That becomes a concrete ramp, so it's ADA compliant. So we can do a wheelchair down there. They're also in shackles, so they don't have to go downstairs. So they come in and they go into this detainee holding area. There is in that light blue square, and you'll see this in all of the whole building, is I put this little light blue area that kind of identifies a private meeting space, whether it's an attorney-client or like the little meeting room in number 3. So they can go here and be held until they go up to the courts, or they will go directly up, but again, never mixing with the public. What happens where the green arrow goes into that elevator, we will make an opening there so that they can go into the back of the elevator. The elevator will be designed that'll just put the public on hold until they get up. So, so that's number 4 and 6. Number 5 is the covered canopy on the north entrance, and we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes, along with number 6, which is the stairs that come down, which is our new fire egress from the 2nd floor. Okay. Number 8 is a new jury room, and it also has a small attorney-client private room in there if somebody needs to meet, and it does have its own restroom. The judges' chambers in number 9, that will become the judges' chambers for the new courtroom, which is number 10. And that judges' chambers also has its own restroom. Again, we're really trying to keep the jury teams and the judges out of the public areas so that they have that more secure areas for them to stay separate.
Steve, go ahead.
Will this jury room, will there be others on the other floors also?
One more.
So this would be in the new
Just for the
courtroom
new
for
courtroom.
the use of the new courtroom?
Yeah, and if they have 2 trials, that they just need to use this one downstairs, then they'll use this one too. I mean, that's what it's designated for.
We have a visiting judge.
Yeah, but it could be for the county courtroom if they're having something and they need a jury room for a couple of days and the other one's busy. I mean, that's the beauty of creating a full justice center.
What kind of security system for the detainee holding area? Because it would be uncomfortable if we have just one sheriff. It's probably cameras and lit back to.
That's why Ron is very much involved, and we'll be working on when we get to the 50% construction. We're putting in all the paths for cameras and locking systems and all of that. So we're not quite there yet, but it's all on the table. So any questions on this floor? I know we're going to move through.
I was just going to say, it seems like the elevator is the only opportunity where detainees have an opportunity to mix with the public. I know
No,
they
it shuts
won't,
off for the public.
but I'm wondering how that works.
I mean, it's all in the programming. So right now, that elevator is already two-sided, so you can go in the main entrance now and come out with the into the second floor court clerk area. So we'll just have to have that. It may require some new brains, the elevator, for us to program it that way.
Key system or a.
Yeah, you like push a button.
Yeah. We have that right now in this building, where if a button is pushed, it lets the deputies go down to the basement, and it kind of stops everybody else from getting in there. But you have to card access to get up and down, and that's probably what we'd go for.
You can't invite strangers in the elevator.
No, not right. And the last thing is just regarding, is there a bathroom facility in the detainee holding area? Are there restrooms in there?
There is not. So there's 2 public bathrooms there, and when we get up to the next floor, there is up to the top floor, there is a bathroom there. So we have to kind of talk about that one.
Okay.
So.
And then finally, the last, as you said, number 6 is the stair coming off the back. It's a fire escape.
Yes.
Is that new?
It is new, and we're going to,
Okay.
you'll
All right.
see a better detail of that, and then that's one of your decision points that I need the conversation on. So here's the main level, and you can see up to the top where that stair is now more detailed. On the lower level, it just showed the landing, so you're now seeing that, and I had to cut it off a little bit to make this clear. But you can see on the top of the screen, there's a red number 1, and that entire side is the court clerk's suite. So they have in the upper left-hand corner where that round table is, that is the family court area, so they can go in with a family and do a smaller session with them. So that's been designated there. They've never had that before. They also have in the room below that, gosh, I don't know why this mouse doesn't.
There's a mouse
Does it show
somewhere.
up there?
No.
No.
I know John has a way of making that little red dot show up, but I don't know
I'm
what
not
it
sure
is.
how he did it either.
We'll have to ask him to show us that trick.
Phyllis is in charge.
No, I didn't do it.
You never showed me.
He hasn't shown you either, right?
No,
We
we
have,
just changed floors.
now, did he just come
We're
in for a
good,
few
we're
minutes?
good.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, now we're back around the wrong floor.
Sorry. No, there's some way.
I'm getting confused. Am I going up the
So
elevator or
this
down the
area, the area right in front of that family courtroom there is more, that's their entrance. So that will be where the customers come in. There's a service counter. They'll be waiting there. There's a couple of kiosks there so they can do some self-help. And then where the rest of that black line is, where it says court clerk, that's all private to staff. So that will all be secured, and they'll have a single point. They'll have a customer service. They only have 2 private offices back there. Everything else is open. And then they do have adequate storage. And then that blue meeting room on the right-hand side is just, again, another place to meet for whoever needs it. We believe we're going to block off that one wall so that they would have to come out of the suite to meet there. So that way the DA and whoever else can use it. Right now it has 2 doors, and we're going to get rid of the one and just come off the hallway. Probation is directly across there, and that's number 2. That's pretty much the way the sheriff's office is set up now. The 2 offices don't change, but they make a small waiting and service counter. And then they are adding a restroom in there, and that will just be attached to the bathroom that's already there. The reason behind that is they have to do UAs, urine analysis, and rather than having to go out into a public bathroom and having people be
Yeah,
observed,
under-controlled.
this is the right way to do it. Again, just trying to meet the needs of those services. Number 3 is the district attorney's office, and that is their entrance where the door is, or where the number 3 is. Giving them their 4 offices. They do have a small sink where that dotted line is. So That's basically their area. And again, it's pretty much what it is, very minimal impacts to walls. Number 4, the blue arrows are again bringing people into the front access. So I put the arrow that's coming up the stairs, or they would take that right-hand turn, go to the lift, come up a half a floor, and then come off and then go through the security area. I don't have a real detailed drawing of that yet or what that'll look like, but I would anticipate that I will have that at our next update. But I just wanted to kind of give you that idea. Any questions on that floor?
Are those columns there where the security area will
Those
be?
are
Or those
columns.
are columns? Okay.
Mhm.
So it'll be somewhere within that
Yeah,
space.
yeah. All right. Second level is not changing that much. If you look at where the number 1 is, that is the new district court judge's chambers. So we'll be moving him out of where number 6 is and moving him back to where his courtroom is. That way he can come right into his courtroom. There is a small touchdown space for staff in front of that. Number 2 is a new restroom. This is, again, keeps the judges out of the circulation of everybody else. But I think this could also be used as an inmate restroom if there is an event that needs to happen there. Because if you notice the arrows, again, they come off the elevator and they're either going into the county courtroom or the district courtroom, keeping them out of the flow of the public. Number 3 is the new judges' chambers for the county judge. And then the county courtroom and the district courtroom. The number 4 really only indicates that they need ADA compliant benches. So we'll do some small modifications to their benches to make it compliant. The right thing to do. And then number 5 is where the elevator or where the exit comes out. So you can see right outside of the elevator, there is a door that goes into a long hallway and it comes out where that window is. So you'd be going, there would be a press bar emergency alarm that would go, if there was a fire, it would release. You'd go out. We're taking that window out, and I have a picture of that to show you. And then they would go out onto the exit. So that's basically how that goes. Again, we're really utilizing existing openings in the building so that we're not making new openings on the exterior.
Any issues with security? Because it's not very far from where the detainees are being walked. And that kind of sounds like what was that guy's name?
Well, Ted Bundy didn't have the advantage of a stairwell.
Yeah, I mean, because it's pretty close there, and it's not locked thus there's a fire. If there's a fire, you hit it and go.
It will be locked, but it will and alarmed. And so we have that in Health and Human Services. If somebody goes out a door, it alarms. We have that in this building as well. So again, I think we've got some work to do on that with Ron and our security people. So, and again, the permitting won't allow us to move through this if we don't do it right.
And
So
it's just a metal staircase?
just a metal iron.
HBC is okay with that?
We'll see. We haven't gone to them yet.
We'll get an old
Another
one.
hole in my building. I don't know. I'm not happy with it.
Well, it's not a new hole, it's just a new appendage, right?
Yes.
Well, they have to put a door in where there's no door.
Right. It's a window.
Where is the public defender space?
Public defender.
There is no public defender space.
There is, I know that they have the court reporters and jury rooms. That's a great question.
Because, public defenders are those poor guys who get paid pittance and have no space and no office, grandiose office like the district attorney, and they're working hard. So we need to make sure they're accommodated in this.
Well, I think the intent is, again, to have all of these touchdown spaces for them. So again, you see 3 blue areas on this floor that it is a room that they can reserve and go in there.
We need to find out, though, if they have any dedicated space in the current, and make sure that we are accommodating them.
Okay, I will write that down and double check
Good
that.
catch, Patty.
Yeah.
Good catch.
I like those
And are there
public
requirements?
Awesome.
Are there requirements we're not meeting if we don't?
I don't know.
Okay, perfect.
And then the bathroom question just came back. We're on the second floor now. Just thinking, if a detainee comes in, needs the bathroom, how far do they have to go to get to it?
They would go up that elevator and then come off over here, or the officer would have to walk them across to a public one. But the way that we talked about it at our meetings is that they would just have them use the restroom before they come over, but they could sit
before you
there
go
for an
get in the
hour.
car.
So I know.
Yeah, right.
So, and then number 6 is a
They get
jury
nervous,
room.
right? They get nervous and
That's the
things change.
second jury room. And there is a very small restroom there now. We have to blow out that wall to make it ADA compliant. So again, meeting that security need. Okay? All right.
Okay.
So this is the north facade, the emergency exit stairs. You can see in the center one where the window is coming out. That's that grayed out area on the right-hand side, upper level. So that is the opening that we'll make. And then you can see on the left-hand new stair is that becomes the door, and then we've got a landing, and then it comes, or a midpoint, and then a landing at the bottom, which will have a gate because we don't want people going up there. So it'll have a secure gate. And again, we're working out the details of that, but I just kind of wanted to show you what that in general looks like. You can also see on the right-hand picture the actual photo of what it looks like from that angle, and it would be that upper right-hand picture within the dashed lines there. That's the window that we're coming out
So
of.
it's on this side of the existing patio cover, off the back door of the courthouse?
Yes, right here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did we have any other plans for that space that we'd talked about?
No, our original thought was just some landscaping back there, but we knew in our work on this building, we knew that we had some landscaping that had to happen back in there, but we really minimalized that, knowing that Jody was in this process of trying to figure out that we have to get some kind of a safety escape off that backside somewhere in this building, so there weren't any really other
One time we
plans
talked
there.
about
So,
maybe parking for judges. We talked about it.
yeah. And with the area of the Sally Port, I think there's maybe some opportunities in there, but that's a fire lane as well, so.
Yeah.
But anyways, and I think Jody's going to show you a slide of what some of the challenges with that location are.
So this is our challenge, and this
that
is
tank.
No.
this is our challenge of not quite knowing what direction you guys want us to go on. Is we have this huge fuel tank in here, and I have tank inside the tank there. My little dog tank is inside there, so not on purpose.
That's pretty funny.
If you remember, back when we were going through the permitting process and planning and zoning with this building, the Historic Preservation Office suggested that we remove this canopy. It's it's been there for a very long time, but it's not historic. And they had suggested that it come off, along with the cover that's right here where the officers would be going into on this east side. I think that leaving that cover for the inmate, the secure area for the inmates, is probably the right thing to do. Then we don't have to worry about shoveling that ramp and safety, those kinds of issues. But this one, I wanted to pose the question to you is, do we now look at this and take that cover off? Our base bid was for $9,000, so that's already in the bid. And that was to leave the canopy and leave the tank and build footers over it. Now, our architect is concerned about how do we puncture that tank, or because they cut it off and they filled it in certain areas, but they're not really sure until we get a soils person in there to ensure that it's stable enough for us to do that. So the architects are suggesting that we remove the canopy and foundation and top off the tank and then build the footings over that. That way the landing would be more on the concrete deck that is already existing under that canopy somewhat. And that would be a change order of $37,000.
I always thought you didn't want to mess with underground tanks. You wanted to leave them in place because of EPA standards, et cetera. So until we know more about that tank and it's breached or what the soil samples are.
And the challenge is that tank is actually under the footer of that canopy. So if we decide to remove it or do anything major, then the canopy is compromised. So we really are looking at the base bid and the option number one, which is to figure out a way to stabilize and build over it. And I think what we're looking for you is, do you have any energy on taking the canopy off or leave it and tell us to work around it until we get to a point that we can't work around it?
I'd rather leave it and see what happens myself. We just keep pulling stuff off of there. And if we're going to keep the one on this side, why should we have to take the one off the back?
I take the canopy off. I go with option one. Did you have other options besides option one?
There was another option, but it was a $75,000 option, which was to take out the whole tank, take the whole thing, take it all out.
So, but if you remove the canopy, doesn't that make your stairwell a little cleaner coming off that backside, the fire escape?
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be much cleaner coming right down.
And I did show you the facing east so that you would see what our building looks like. Of course, the green fencing would be gone from there. The temporary salad port would be gone. But then you would see more of, I just wanted you to see both angles of that.
Can you flip back to the stairs, please?
Maybe.
That canopy really has no architectural relationship to that building at all.
I think it no longer serves the purpose it was put in for.
It's quite popular. People sit under there and have lunch in the shade. They have little barbecues back there, but it's a whole different function too. Like the police aren't there anymore, the sheriff aren't there anymore.
Right. So the use is going to be completely
different.
Outdated.
I'd like to just leave it as is until we find out more information and see what it's going to involve with that tank. The tank is of greater concern to me.
Well, the tank doesn't have to be removed. You're just going to fill it, and you're going to fill it in either scenario, correct?
Yeah, if I might. The tank has already been certified. We went through the process of...
And we found it.
Yeah, we found it. It's been tested, certified, and it's filled with flow fill.
Yeah.
It was cut and lowered with the anticipation the tank is going to stay there. We did not plan on moving. That's why Jody had an option of removing the tank, and we started talking. We took that off the table because really removing the tank isn't an option.
Right. So the tank's not really an issue in terms of this decision.
Right.
And regardless, if we take the canopy off, the stairs still have to look like that, right?
Yes.
It's not going to change the configuration of the stairs, so.
It may come out a little further, or
Yeah,
the landing might look a little different.
Just keep messing with the building, and it just bothersome to me.
Thanks, everybody, and sorry I had to be gone for a little bit, and I've missed the prior discussion. The only thing I have to add is that when we were getting the approvals for this building, we made commitments that we would look at the removal of this and the non-historic components around the courthouse, which are the little entrance on the side of the sheriff's office that's been there for so long, and this.
We're leaving this one on this side.
Okay, well, that decision's been made, and but we really said we will look at this. This was something they asked us, and I can't remember if it was more than look or when we get to the courthouse, we will be bringing this up to historic standards. And so I think it's worth following through with that. I know we've become accustomed to seeing it always there, me as well, especially, but that's what restoring to historic integrity means, is getting rid of non-historic add-ons.
I don't remember that discussion.
Well, and I think, so we did go back and look at that, and we said we would look at it.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, we're looking at it. And you guys can get to make a decision on that. So that's why we wanted to.
Yeah, well, my decision
brain.
would be to do everything we can to bring it back into historic character. I
Well,
think.
we're cutting another hole in the back of the building to put in stairs, so.
Well, that's more ADA and
No,
fire
it's fire,
standards of
but
the
still,
day.
I mean, we're just.
Yeah.
We can mess.
Yeah, this is still a working building that we're using it for specific purposes, and we're going to have to modify some things to make it functional for the purposes. So it's not going to be completely historic anyhow, some of the changes we have to make, but we're keeping it in mind as to trying to retain as much of the historic stuff as possible in the process. So that's how I look at it, and if we end up leaving the canopy or removing it for functional reasons, that would be maybe more important than having 100% pure historical reasons.
Yeah, I'd like to see what the building looks like without it. What's that door, what's that back entrance look like? What are we changing with, that?
I can have them do a rendering of what that would
be
look like
important.
without it.
And what's the condition of that wall and that door behind that's been protected by this canopy for so many years, as long as I've been here.
This will still be a staff entrance. As you recall, the single point of access on the south side will be for public, but, the staff, district attorney, judge's staff will all come in,
Well,
the
then it
doors
serves the
that they.
purpose of sheltering that entrance for staff to
Yeah.
come and go, so maybe it does have a purpose.
Patty, I think that's a good idea to take a look behind. And I think as long as we're looking at renderings or things like that, we should look at how it could be either revegetated or how it would be presented in the future. It was so long ago, but we went through the whole addition of the comm center dispatch to that building, and it was very disruptive to what had been a planned quadrangle in the back, and the space and the movement around the space. It was under city approvals at the time, and they didn't have location and extent in the books then. And there was a movement of the picnic table and kind of a reconstruction to create a place for people. So I think that we shouldn't just look at, here's going to look denuded. Here is what it would look like if restored to more of its original condition. And I don't know if the Historical Society would have any pictures of what the back of the building looked like back in the day. But so the future board can make a good choice from alternatives or planning. But there's a way to create, I think, that space for people who would like to hang out in, and maybe it's separate. Maybe that's a gazebo that's back removed from the building itself rather than having to make it an attachment to the building.
Well, and I think that, if you recall, there were horse stables back there.
A little further down, yeah.
Then it was
On the
Public
other
Works,
side.
Road and Bridge had their trucks in a building there. So, it has changed. But I also, the connection between the jail and that ramp area is also going to be vegetated. So we will, between 7 and then the jail, there will be some vegetation or some kind of barrier there. We still have to work that out as security because we really do want to isolate the inmates coming through. And I know that there was discussion when we were doing this building of how do we even just block that whole thing off, because Joe really doesn't want anybody in there. Coming in that back door, number 5, is fine, but he doesn't really want people hanging in there. So Anderson Hallis has a landscape architect on board, and they're going to start doing that, but we're not quite there yet. But I could have them maybe throw some idea and look at what the history was on that.
So for the new landscaping, it'd be a discrete entry, because I remember that, when, who was it, some high-profile person was brought in, you've got all the news media
Martin Sheen.
clustered around outside, so it's like that perp walk photography opportunity back there.
Right.
And I was thinking, was the screen on that port originally to try and create some discrete screening from people in that area, or?
I think that they put that up because of the wind and the snow
Okay, maybe
gathering
that was
in
it.
there.
Okay, so it serves a purpose,
Yeah.
that it'd be nice to know whoever's going to be using it most to see what they think, you know? But, so the landscaping will probably be some way of creating screening, secure area.
Right.
Right.
And then we also still have to maintain an egress out of this building because that is our
That's egress for us, too.
And it's
Okay.
egress for the officers to go out. So, you know, there's some details that still need to be worked out, but I'll, let me go back to them and see what we can throw
Expect some
together.
more information.
Okay.
Perfect.
But in,
And I know we're not talking costs because we don't have those numbers yet.
Right.
But how are we going to pay for this? Regardless of the
We've approved
numbers.
some capital funding in
right,
the budget.
we
for-
have some budget already in the budget. We are in the middle of doing a cost analysis. We do it, we're on our third session right now of figuring out where we're at in the construction. We are going to complete that and be coming back to you guys with where we're at on that.
I know we're looking at anything we can find. But, yeah, that's just, it's just, we just keep building stuff.
And then, so what I'm hearing is kind of stick with the base bid for now, but go ahead and see what our soils and all of that are going to take, and then come back to you and report
You
out.
can always take it off, but if we take it off, we won't be putting it back on.
So I'll do some due diligence before we get there.
Thanks. Good info.
And then just I'll wrap up real quick. I just wanted to make sure you guys do know that we are researching and planning for some grants. We're looking at DOLA for the energy impact, which is going to be very difficult because we don't have a whole lot of oil and gas here. But we are looking at that. We're also looking at some tiered grant opportunities from DOLA, State Historic Fund for any of the ADA stuff. And then the Colorado Court Security Fund, we've already met with them about the screening equipment, some of those types of things. And then also the CORE, Community Office for Resource Efficiency, for lighting and baseboard. I mean, there's just not a lot we're doing that we know of yet. But really looking at making sure we have a contingency just in case we don't know what we're going to run into.
I think with DOLA, you can always push the point of this, we serve this district.
That's what I was
And
just
we've
thinking.
We've got, Rio Blanco and Garfield County and, it's not like we tell them you can't come up here unless we get your dollars, so.
And I'm working with Kara because she's been really involved in that. So she's going to help me along the way to see how we can.
And if we need any help with Greg Winkler, let me know.
Great, thank you. Our next steps, again, are to analyze the construction budget at 80% completion. That'll be coming up. Present to the board. Let you guys know, again, where we're at. Oops. Complete those construction documents, get our building permit in, plan for our phased construction, and then work on public outreach as we start to figure out what our construction is. We have talked about doing public open houses and such, but I'm not sure. I need to just do another double check about the security, like how much do you put out there for public when we're building a secure building? It's a fine balance, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, it strikes me it's different than when we were designing this building, because then we were looking for public input on design and appearance and functionality. And again, and for the most part, that's not what we're looking for in this. And it's more potentially a celebration of what's happening and what will be displaced, and information for the public about how to use the court in the meantimes. If we have great information, like we're restoring some of the original wood paneling to its natural colors that were painted over with gray, I'm sure the public would be glad to hear about that. But I don't know what input you would be seeking from an open house. Right. So that's the first thing to determine, to decide if we need one or if there's some other invitation to the public.
Yeah. And that's why I was really thinking the outreach of impacts and use towards when we get to that point.
Yeah. I don't know what others might think, but.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to check with Ron and see, bring him into that process.
Whenever I'm casing a jail for potential escape, it's nice to have a public outreach.
Open
Go through and just measure the stairway and the window size and
You can learn
thickness
how
of
to
the
get out
walls.
that back door down those stairs and jump on that canopy.
We'd be doing a service to the dark community of the dark side.
All right, we're good.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
for your time.
Sorry, I missed you
Okay,
earlier.
we need to go into a special meeting called for executive session
Is,
for the purposes of,
is Karen here for any reason?
she's for our meeting upstairs.
Oh, she is,
We're having
okay.
exec
Oh,
upstairs.
great, thanks.
For the purposes of APCHA enforcement of restrictive covenants, FAA ATC regulatory changes, FAA ADO meeting, Upper Midnight LLC water application, personnel claim, CDPHE retail food inspection program, Castle Creek Road status, CCI appeal, River District update, all pursuant to CRS 24640224B.
So move. Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are in executive session. How long a break does the board want to take before
10
we?
minutes.
10? Grassroots, thank you. We are done. Thanks. 10 minutes, we'll be upstairs.